I'm going to call the Springfield City Council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Counselor Weber.
Here.
Counselor Moe.
Here.
Counselor Rodley. Here. Counselor Blackwell. Here. Counselor Buck.
Present.
And Counselor Stout.
Here, thank you. We have two items this evening. The first one is the Centennial Traffic Calming Pilot Review with Michael Liebler.
And a little lead in from Brian Conlon. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. This began quite a few years ago, so I want to be able to provide a little bit of historic context to this. And Michael will provide all of the technical and engineering context. He's our transportation planning engineer and does a really superb job at it. So I'm going to read this so I can get through it pretty quickly. Development Public Works has approximately 10-year history of Centennial Boulevard residents raising concern for vehicle driver overspeed from 18th to 28th Streets. Ops staff involved Springfield Police through the years requesting increased traffic patrol. They helped out a lot there, as well as placement of radar speed detection equipment that provided driver feedback. In 2022, I received a neighborhood petition from approximately 80+ residents requesting a speed reduction and traffic calming corridor be considered. And in 2023, Ops traffic engineering staff began researching the prospect of designing and constructing speed humps, formerly bumps, as a traffic calming option. Staff met with Mayor Van Gordon and councilors Rodley and Blackwell as this affected their wards, with a recommendation to design and construct a temporary speed hump pilot project for Centennial Boulevard from 18th to 28th Streets. This approach would be analyzed pre and post implementation to better evaluate potential benefits and impacts and inform our future considerations. And with that, Michael has a presentation, so.
Good evening, Council. As stated, I'm Michael Liebler, your transportation planning engineer. Going to talk tonight about the Centennial Traffic Calming Pilot Project. Let's see if I can get this to work. There we go. Okay. So just another quick little overview. Citizens had expressed concerns about traffic conditions on Centennial Boulevard from 21st to 28th Street. Staff confirmed speeds outside of norm for posted 30 miles per hour, addressing these concerns. There was a citizen petition to CMO for traffic calming from 21st to 28th Street. And from that, a traffic calming pilot project was initiated in the spring of 2024 with the installation in the summer of 2024. So some basic project elements were the installation of rubber speed cushions along Centennial corridor from 21st to 28th, the initiation of a before and after study of the effects of traffic calming along Centennial and surrounding roadways, and public outreach gauging overall public opinion at the time of the installation and 1 year after. So we'll get right into the study elements. So the short of it is the traffic calming definitely slowed speeds down out there. Before the traffic calming, the average speed was 34 miles per hour with a 85th percentile speed of 37. Just to kind of frame it, typically when we're looking at 85th percentile speed, we want that to be between 0 and 5 miles per hour of a posted speed. The posted speed limit out there is 30 miles per hour. In the after condition, after the calming, the average speed was found to be 25 miles per hour with an 85th percentile speed of 30 miles per hour. So a little more aggressive than to get into the right speed profile. Some of that has to do with the nature of the temporary traffic calming. These are like rubber blocks that are pinned down. They have like kind of a front lip on them. They're a little more aggressive than a permanent installation that has a smooth lip and is done with asphalt or concrete. So next I want to talk about traffic volumes. There's extensive amount of traffic volumes taken around this corridor on J, Olympic, and G Street. The full study is in the packet if you really want to dive into the analysis, but I'm going to give you mostly just the highlights and important kind of data. So I think one of the first things I want to highlight is there was definitely a reduction on Centennial's corridor, a 23 to 25% reduction during the weekdays, and a 23% reduction for Saturday. Centennial is classified as an arterial in our transportation system plan. Typically, arterials have our higher volumes or higher speeds. So you can see Centennial before around 7,500, now around 5,800 in a weekday, and 6,300 before, but now almost 5,000 in the after condition. So definitely a reduction in volume on Centennial. Directly adjacent to Centennial to the south is J Street. J Street saw an increase in traffic, 21 to 23% increase during the weekday and a 46% increase on Saturday. As I said previously, we did a lot of counts at different locations along these corridors. So when I'm looking at this specific table, this is a count that was done just west of 28th on J Street. So we're going to look after this at some counts that were done right in front of the school, which is on the other side of J Street on the 21st to 28th corridor. So there was an increase. One thing I'll bring to your attention, since J Street is a local, it typically has lower volumes. So there was an increase from 730 to 889 in the Thursday, from 736 to 893 on the Friday, and 435 to 633 on the Saturday. So since the volume on a local is low, just 150 cars on there will give you a high percentage increase, but it's not like in the thousands that transferred from Centennial before. So if we switched back, you see, we lost, a good 1,000, 1,700 on Centennial. We gained 100, 150 on J Street. So it's not like the 21, 23% was all of the traffic from the Centennial drop went to J Street. But for a local, that's a significant percentage increase. We also had other locations. One other place that we definitely want to look at was right in front of the elementary school. This also saw an increase, but in terms of percentage, a minimal one. Looking like 60, 80, during the weekday, not much of a change on the weekend. The trips that would have transferred from Centennial to J Street are less of the neighborhood trips. Those are more of the through trips, kind of the cut by trips. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the numbers and you're making considerations about the effects of the traffic calming. We also looked at other parallel corridors. Olympic, like Centennial's and Arterial Street, it has very high volumes. It increased, by a good amount, not the full amount that Centennial dropped. It's a lower percentage, but it's a higher number because it already had a larger number on it already with about 15,000. So it went up from 15 or 16,000 to 16.5 or 16.7 to 17.4. Not much change on the weekend. G Street is much farther down. It is a collector, very much a residential collector street, but it saw very minimal increases. So moving on to kind of public outreach. Once again, we did pretty good survey results. Thank you, Mike McGilvery and operations for putting on the public outreach campaign. So on the left, you're going to see your initial kind of right after we installed the speed cushions. And on the right, you're going to see the results after 1 year of them being in. So the first chart here is, in your opinion, do the new speed cushions make Centennial safer? Around 30% yes, around 52% no, and a good 17, 18% maybe in the before. I think all the maybes consolidated to the yes and the after. And so you had around 55, 57% no in the after, and around 45% yes in the after. Or in your opinion, have the speed cushions made Centennial safer? Another general kind of graph that we saw. Do you like the new speed cushions? This stayed pretty consistent between the first initial study and the second one, with around, 30%, 33% saying yes, they do like the new speed cushions, and around 66% saying no, they did not like the new speed cushions. Some general themes associated with the public outreach. Residents on the corridor tend to support the traffic calming. Citizens who do not live on the corridor tend to not support these. At least one of the petitioners no longer supports the installation. There was a general desire.
Do we know why?
Oh, what?
About the petitioner who changed their mind? Do we know the reason why?
It's in here a little bit, but yes, they cite noise. They cite the design of them as being a little more aggressive. Don't see it as much as effective, and kind of a distraction of the trucking kind of went somewhere else. Or when the trailers kind of go over these speed bumps, they leave a lot of material like nails and other things on the road, damaging vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
And once again, all of these comments are located in the two different public outreach coverage that are part of your packet, so you can read them as you will. There was also several comments about a desire for enforcement rather than installation. A significant number of requests for traffic calming from other locations came out of this installation, this pilot installation for adjacent corridors, but also kind of citywide. Some other common themes were concerns about J Street, additional traffic and speeds, especially around schools. One note that wasn't in the analysis, but that I requested from the traffic engineer, Kelly Sando, who performed the before and after analysis for us. I asked her to take a look at the heavy vehicle numbers before and after on Centennial and J Street. Centennial had a 36 daily trucks in the before and 30 in the after. J Street had a 27 in the before, but 64 in the after condition. Percentages of trucks are rather low, so percentages don't really tell you much in terms of this. But that's one extra piece of data that I just got today from her, kind of trying to frame what happened with heavy vehicles. Some other common themes were design was a little too aggressive and loud. As I mentioned, the temporary ones are a little more jarring because of their nature and some of their design. Speed cushions are damaging to vehicles. And then another common theme was these are great and want them implemented all over town. So with that, I'm here to answer your questions. Looking for some feedback today from council, specifically, should the temporary traffic calming measures remain and planned for as permanent installations? Should additional speed cushions be explored on adjacent corridors or the 18th to 21st sections of Centennial as originally planned? We had originally planned to put in between 18th and 21st. The actual petition and petitioners was 21st to 28th. And when we went out there to mark, some of the people between 18th and 21st were a little concerned, so we held off until we had the results from the pilot study to talk with council to put those final two installations in. And then in general, how would council like staff to address additional requests for traffic calming throughout the city? Like a traffic calming program with protocols and procedures, or kind of stick to the status quo of us working it and then having them petition council? We may not have enough time tonight to talk about that one. And you're more than welcome to table that for another time or give us guidance as to what you want to see back from staff. But I will leave it at that.
Yeah, Councilor Mo.
Can you describe to us the difference between speed cushions and speed bumps?
So a speed cushion typically is a lot wider, a lot longer. So as you're going down the street, it's going to be something that's either 14 to 20 foot, 20 feet, 21 feet long, depending on what kind of speed profile you want. A speed hump is a very thin, aggressive, high, jolting thing. Cushions usually have emergency vehicle cut throughs. They're usually only 3 to 4 inches tall, and they're more of a softer measure that is more accommodating to emergency vehicles.
Counselor Blackwell.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have a concern when I read through the information about the added traffic on J Street, especially around the elementary school where there's kids walking and maybe people that typically speed on Centennial speeding on that road. And it's kind of where do you stop with this, or and I also want some clarification. You mentioned that the temporary are more aggressive. So a permanent, what's the difference there, or what does that look like?
So these are hard rubber blocks that are pieced together like a puzzle and then pinned into the ground. They have a front lip on them, kind of like your driveway. That doesn't really allow for the tire to transition as smoothly up and then onto the speed cushion, right? So as a temporary installation, they're a little more aggressive. They're a little more rough. Whereas at a permanent installation with asphalt or concrete, we'd have a very smooth transition of the tires, and a smoother kind of transition to the tabletop and relief out of the traffic calming. So
Can I get a follow-up? And also the negative things that I've heard, like in the community of people that have talked about it, have been the spacing.
Okay.
The spacing is a little awkward. And can you explain? I believe it was for fire apparatus to ride through properly or something. There was something about the spacing and I feel that too when I've driven through it. It's like, kind of wonky that way. So
yeah, so the emergency vehicle cut throughs are meant because the wheelbase of a fire truck is wider than a typical car. So it's meant so that in an emergency, the fire truck can just go right down the middle without its tires going up or left and jarring them or slowing them down. Typical passenger cars have a narrower wheelbase, so they're forced to at least put one tire on it or both tires. And that creates the vertical deflection that provides the traffic calming, right? So there's spacing of the 3 cushions that's strategic. We try to put it so that if somebody chooses to pick a tire, they put their tire in the gap. We try not to put it in the bike lane, which I know some bicyclists don't like because they don't like hitting the lip either, which will be smoother with a permanent installation. But we do that on purpose because we don't want the cars to try to go into the bike lane to hit that gap with that. The second spacing is how often do you put them as you're going down the road? Spacing, according to various different design criteria, tries to keep them close enough where people don't speed in between them to get up above that 85th percentile speed we're going, but not too far away that people speed up in between them, but not so close that they have to like be jamming. So we try to keep them between, like, there's a wide range depending on the speed profile, but 300 and 500, I think I got them around 400 feet for each of these. Trying to space them between the residential driveways the best I could so I didn't mess up driveway operations. But if you want people to go faster, you increase the speeding. That increases the speed in between the traffic calming measures. You want them to go slower, you make them narrower, more like a speed bump, like the 14 feet, and you put them closer together.
Thank you. Thank you, because I think you touched on just about all the questions that we talked about when we met. We're like, we want to make sure we're tracking these things so we can come back and make whatever the next decisions are. I think I had big concerns about G Street because it narrows. And so I was a little bit relieved to see that it didn't bump up there, but I see that folks are going down J Street, which is right along the school, which is another challenge. And I appreciated, I wrote a note here and then you talked about it. In my chatting with folks, there's definitely been, the feedback is different depending on whether you lived there and you were working forever to slow the traffic down and whether you drove through there and got very crabby that things had changed. So the difference between the residents and the travelers through, I think, was really interesting. And to the other requests, I also think that's really interesting because I think and this is, I'm going to go a little bit just sort of opinion and anecdotal, but we talk a lot up here about the transitions in Springfield, and that is a perfect pilot neighborhood because we've done so much development. There's a lot of industrial over there. There's now a lot of retail over there, and there's just a lot of activity. And you still have these cozy little residential neighborhoods, some of which have wide streets and some of which have narrow streets. So it's a great opportunity for us to just keep working at this until we figure it out, because I think that the residents are right to be, and it's probably when we look at the folks who are like, I want that over here. It's those neighborhoods where we're seeing them grow up and we're seeing the traffic change and we're seeing people want to be able to ride their bikes and walk and all of that stuff. And the traffic still wants to be able to move. So it's going to be an interesting and challenging conundrum, but I love that we're on this journey. And I'm looking forward to how we tweak it, or do we adjust it, or do we try other things? Because I do think this is going to be an important thing for us to figure out for the livability of Springfield moving forward as we are building more and packing in more and trying to lean into how people want to live in the city. So thank you. I think we're off on an interesting journey with this.
Council Weber.
Thank you. When we are talking about damage to vehicles, do we know if that is because of the design of the bumps, or is it because people are going too fast over them still, or is it a combination? Do we know that?
The information that I'm citing in terms of concerns about damage to vehicles, the one petitioner who changed their mind has been rather helpful in terms of sending me lots of pictures of nails and other things that have jumped off of trailers. But I don't have any specific reports from individuals. I don't have anything from our risk management office for anybody with claims associated with any official damage. I think with a lot of traffic calming, because it feels rough and all of that, there's always that concern, and there's always that concern about, well, I'm going up on one wheel, and you're hitting one wheel, you're messing up my alignment, you're doing these other things. And it is a higher volume road, so that's a lot more cars hitting them all the time. So hence the more damage.
Michael referenced the fact that it's arterial, and it's not commonplace for a city to make, a project like this, their first project on an arterial. And we debated it and argued it amongst ourselves and saw it sort of like your perspective. This is a industrial area, yet residential. And so it has a lot of the elements of both. And so a little bit for me, I wonder anecdotally if it were 66th Street, which is a collector between Thurston Road and Main Street, would that be a little bit different because you're taking in a school zone the same way, but you're not offloading onto as many smaller local residential streets. So,
Councilor Stout.
Thank you. I know obviously these speed humps are one way of calming traffic. Did we look extensively at things like tactical urbanism as a way of actually calming this road? I'm thinking things like, adding additional bollards little by little, changing the width of the lanes, looking at, adjusting how parking is aligned, improving bike access, all those sorts of things, adding planters, things that actually slow people down visually, not necessarily by adding the additional hump in the roadway. Do we look at that as a possible solution? And if so, why was that not considered? Can we consider that on a future one? And if not, can we consider it in the future?
Brian may need to help me on this one, but I think it was more of a what can we do as quick as we can to alleviate the need kind of situation. And the pin down rubber traffic calming was kind of the fastest thing to put in there. It doesn't require concrete trucks. It doesn't require a lot. There are other soft measures such as speed feedback signs that we probably could have installed that have some limited effectiveness. And there's also some other design features which looking at the roadway right now, it has landscaping strips, but it doesn't have any street trees. So some of these features that narrow the roadway like parking or planting islands or even street trees, were not specifically contemplated because I'm assuming because we wanted to do something now and take a look at it. So that's why these traffic calming measures were selected as sound about.
Yeah. I think you're correct. I think the thing that motivated us though was that the Ring cameras are pretty popular now. I would see camera videos being sent to me with people doing 70, 80 miles an hour on that stretch of road. So it just seemed like, hey, this would be a good investment. We need to evaluate it because there isn't a policy, a formal policy, and then also do the analytics so that it will inform us. Some of the measures you're talking about, Councilor Stout, I had discussed a little bit with our risk manager because she's from Eugene, and there's quite a few streets over in Eugene that have the speed humps, deployed. So that was a little bit in our assessment. Let's take a conservative approach. We could have put 6 humps in. We put 4 in. Michael designed it, and then we decided to hold off at 18th Street to 21st because let's bite off a little bit less to start.
Counselor Buck, and then we'll go back this way.
Thank you. Yeah, I can certainly appreciate how somebody would equate the jarring nature of the temporaries with vehicle damage. There's a lot of things that can cause the same kind of damage. As a driver, I'm never a fan of having to drive over the temporaries just because of the nature of them. But I am curious if we move to permanent, what the implications for future maintenance becomes, because as you're considering the life of a road, and the maintenance and all of that, putting those speed humps, the permanent ones in there, does change that picture. I just don't know if it's by a little bit or by a lot.
Profile of it.
Yeah. One thing that operations did that was great is while we closed the road, they went out there and they crack sealed. So they took the opportunity of the road to close to get some extra light at it. But putting in the rubber speed bumps, it was in the tens of thousands of pins that we drilled into to put these rubber in. And so I think in terms of if we put it in permanent, we would probably do that in line with a paving project that's going to need to happen here about the time that these actual rubber bumps from the number of impacts they're getting right now are going to go bad anyways. The long-term maintenance, when we go through and we pave and then we pave these in with them, kind of goes along with, I would say haven't looked at the research yet, but if you put them in with the paving as you do like a grind and overlay, you can kind of build the base, and then they're like a lot more stouter than the temporary installations. Hitting something that's a rubber block that's pinned is a lot different than something that's continuous pour in there.
Absolutely.
But long-term maintenance, I don't know the data on how that affects. I would only say that it's better to put them in as part of another paving project to have one ribbon as opposed to a broken chunk.
That makes sense. And part of it is, does it change the schedule, and then also the long-term cost? There might not be much change in the long-term cost, but just curious about that.
I think anytime you put deflection in and you change how forces go up and down, right? You're going to have less long-term maintenance in just the physics of impacts and other things versus just a rolling tire. So probably a little less maintenance without traffic coming than with just a smooth roadway.
Counselor Rodley.
And I saw your hand going up too, because you probably both want to jump in. And so I'm not going to speak for Counselor Blackwell, but we were part of the conversations. I appreciate Counselor Stout's questions around, did we consider things? Yes to all of those things. And also we were considering expense and this is really our first delving into this. It took us years to get stuff done on D Street. And so this was like, okay, we're moving into a neighborhood and not wanting to commit fully until we figured out what worked. So that was part of it too. And I would just be honest and sort of say the things. I think considering, you know, the council that we had at the time and thoughts and considerations about things, we wanted to try to work our way into a Springfield kind of approach to traffic calming and not just borrow from here and there, but start to kind of look at our unique situations and see what it is. So I think all of those reasons are why we didn't just go right to like, let's start here. So that's partly why I'm loving the feedback from people and just the feedback from folks who want to see us do more of it in other areas, because that keeps us on that road to like, how do we come up with the sort of Springfield answer to traffic calming in these neighborhoods that really need it? And I just love how the conversation is shifting, and I appreciate the feedback. And again, I'll say it, looking forward to next steps. But there were some, as we were making the decisions, because they definitely brought it to us, it's like, okay, well, what's a step we could take without going from here to the all the way to the end, and get the feedback from the residents who had been reaching out to both Councilor Blackwell and I about the safety concerns, so that we could figure out what the next road was.
So Michael.
I have another question. If you have any data around the speed feedback signs, I don't know exactly what they're called, but if they're as effective and if there was like a significant cost difference, I just can't remember when we discussed those or using those.
I was here then. They worked when they were out. And so the new speed feedback signs with the radar detection where they're posted on a sign versus a piece of equipment. I'm not sure about that. I suspect he might know, Michael.
Yes, they do provide some speed reduction. It's not as aggressive of a speed reduction, and it doesn't have the same long-term effectiveness of it if there isn't a backup of enforcement, right? Because we're always talking about the 3 E's, you know, engineering, education, and enforcement. So that one particularly is effective, but it does require a little follow-up, and it loses a little bit of effectiveness over time as people get used to, if there isn't a police officer to nail them. And we always try to keep those so they don't go higher than a certain speed, so teenagers don't try to hit the high mark on the speed sign. So.
All right, I got a couple of questions before, and maybe Deputy Chief, if you can kind of wander towards the microphone, I got an enforcement question for you. I'm giving you the warning ahead of time. So when I read the feedback, I read kind of a broad division in the community between if you live on a corridor where it's slower, you're a big fan of this. And if you don't, right, it seems it's high impact. And one of the questions that we get all the time is, what does it look like to do it with just like get the same benefit with just enforcement? You know, so, and I know, and maybe you could start with commentary about how we all drive since the pandemic. And then if you could just use your swath of experience to say, like, how hard, without some sort of engineering, how hard would it be to get this far without enforcement?
It's really hard to affect speed in a residential or commercial neighborhood without regular enforcement. Speed enforcement specifically is a moving target. We try to be reactive to citizen community complaints. We understand residential areas are tricky. People live there. They see it all the time. We really rely a lot on our eyes and ears on the street. Michael, Brian's folks with operations, when they're out and about working on the roadways, they're very observant about the areas and let us know and share with us, hey, we're seeing a lot of high speeds in these areas, and we try to react to that from almost a neutral perspective. But just speed humps alone, just speed signs alone are not as effective without a certain level of enforcement mechanism in place. I'm a fan of the speed signs. I like those. It's almost a way of, I won't say public shaming, but it does call out the speed, not only to you, but everyone else behind you on the street. And people sometimes feel obligated to slow down. And if we have that data to act on, that'll show us the 34 to 37 mile per hour range that Michael referenced on Centennial. That'll give us an idea what times a day we should be doing enforcement. It's just a moving target.
And since the pandemic, do you think that traffic speeds are up or down?
Traffic speeds are up.
And are they showing any sign of coming back down to what their historic norms are, or do we all just drive too fast? I'm looking over at the.
We all drive fast, and part of the blame or the credit goes to the great technology in our cars right now. Going fast 20 years ago felt a lot different in our cars. The suspension wasn't as good. The engines were louder. There was you had more feedback from your car that you're going too fast. Cars now, especially electric cars, you don't hear a loud muffler. You don't feel the jarring motion. The cars are built better, so I think that contributes to the speed increase.
All right. All right. Thanks, Deputy Chief.
You're welcome.
So I think, I think I'm comfortable with, us, continue listening to what the neighborhood has to say, leaving leaving the speed cushions out there. I think the two questions I really have are, one of them is my understanding of speed cushion sort of as a technology is I should be able to comfortably go through the entire corridor at the speed limit. Or should I have this kind of like screeching acceleration type motion?
So what we're trying to do is get the speed within that right profile so that your 85th percentile speed, and where we measure the 85th percentile speed isn't at the speed traffic calming device, it's at the mid block.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is keep that mid block in that sweet spot where the 85th percentile is between the speed limit and like 5 over, right? So you can smooth things out to try to keep the cars going over it faster. But for the most part, you're trying to get them slower at the traffic calming, especially with like speed cushions, so that as they speed up, they don't go higher speeds
And
in between.
they don't launch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you don't want them to get down all the way to really low below.
One of the things I would love to see more information on is the distribution of the speeds, especially before and after, and just seeing whether or not there's, how wide that distribution is. Or if both times it's a relatively narrow distribution, right? Because that is a significant change in the speed on the corridor. And then I think I sit back and I really think about where the community is, and I'm thinking about the feedback we've seen on D Street, the feedback we've seen on Mill Street, the feedback we've seen here, is there's an opportunity for us, I think, to really talk to the community about what these traffic calming measures look like before we do more and what they sort of feel like and sound like. Because one thing that's really consistent is that dichotomy between people who live in the neighborhood think this is the best thing ever. The rest of the citizenry, the access, because, we are, right, like, our traffic network is all connected together. It feels like a high impact. Why are you doing this? And I think there's an opportunity really to start talking to people about why do we do treatment? How does, the engineering, the education and enforcement all link together to try to get speeds down? Because the thing we've got to see from a public safety perspective is if we could get the speed down just a little bit, it would keep everybody safer. All right. Anybody else? I know we got housing next. Did you guys get enough direction?
So it sounded like to me that you want to keep them in and keep evaluating them for now and continuing to get feedback. Didn't hear if you guys wanted to move forward with the other 2 installations between 18th and 21st, and whether or not you want us to come back with suggestions for any policy or staying with status quo in terms of how to address traffic calming.
We'll see if we can get. Go ahead, Councilor Radley.
Thank you. I'll jump in on that. Because the 18th to 21st is in my ward, and I know we had talked about coming back and giving that a go. And I am supportive of giving that a try, and people can come yell at me and we can figure out the things around that. The other piece that I was going to say that I didn't, I was very interested to see the data around Olympic, because now I am not a traffic planner, but the dream as we start to tweak this is to see people, if you want through traffic, to move through on those. You all have a name for them. they're not the whatever they are, the Olympic streets and the ones. So it was good to see that for me, it was good to see that going up if people are moving from Centennial up to those streets that have more infrastructure and are able to handle that. And to figure out how to see less in the residentials. And I know a lot of people drive through residentials because there's less police officers and all of those things. So as we talk, and I'm also very supportive of let's talk about policy and what do we want to look at and how do we want to evaluate it, because that's how I'm thinking about it. And if somebody can educate me if there's a different way of looking at it, is like, how do we, if we're going to increase traffic, let's increase it on those roads and not put the burden on those smaller residential roads. Thank you. I don't know if that helps or hurts, but
Before we go to Councilor Buck, could you clarify, like, what type of road is Centennial? What type of road is Olympic?
Both Centennial and Olympic are arterial streets. That's the highest functioning class before you get to a freeway.
So realistically, right, like the path that we would be going down is, changing, a road that is designed to act as an arterial to a different type of road.
Yes.
That was part of the conversation we had with the residents too, and making this a temporary pilot project, that at some point in time in the near future, we're going to be up against needing to resurface the road, and we may go backwards depending on the discussions.
Okay, Councilor Buck.
So, I just want to clarify, just because I'm a little bit new to this, and this is as much a question for you, Corey, and Commissioner Councilor Blackwell as you guys. So, when we're looking at this project, obviously safety is primary goal, but I feel like I heard some other goals in there in addition to safety. That wasn't the only thing, and that could be wrong, but my question is, first of all, if that's the case, I guess, do we feel like we're addressing, in addition to safety, the other goals with this that we set out to? And I'm not sure what they were because I wasn't here at that time, but I feel like this was a little broader than just let's slow things down to keep people safe. And so I'm just wondering if we're really hitting the mark on all of our objectives.
I love that question. I think, and I might have had my own personal goals, and maybe Councilor Blackwell had some too, because I think it was a combination of things, right? So it's safe. It's definitely traffic calming and safety for folks in the neighborhood, and because of like changing traffic and how things are, like what do we do with that? Like how do we take an arterial and change it so that it fits the changing needs of the community? So I think there was if I was to say there was any other goal in addition to the safety, which was primary, it was kind of fact gathering and education and figuring out how we could do this. So I think, and it was an opportunity to step into that sphere and support staff in bringing us back the data that we would need to make these kind of decisions moving forward. Does that sound like I'm lying or I'm telling the truth?
I'm not going to say.
Go ahead, Michael.
What I want to say is I can definitely put together a council briefing memo to give you more detail on kind of like the nuances of the arterial and the functional classification. It also ties into our TSP and future planned projects and which roads are classified to that. So it's a larger can of worms that we may not have enough time to get to tonight. So
we're already 15 over. The housing folks are going like this. Go ahead. Are you sure? I think a briefing memo would help us, right? And I think before we come back and have a conversation about installing more down the, like a little bit more time for some more information, some more discussions would be helpful, because I think we just articulated what the big policy decision is, and we're just starting to dive into it, which is this road's an arterial road today for the entire community. Are we making the policy decision to move it to a neighborhood road or change its functional classification? Because that's effectively what you're leading us up to. And I feel like just having time to have that conversation would be helpful, because the thing I keep thinking about is if we make that decision and we have all the transportation money we need to implement it, what does it look like? Do we have capacity on those outer roads to sort of push traffic away from there? And I think that's a big decision that we just have to be, aware of. The other piece I think it's valuable to note is, again, we're talking almost specifically about what that neighborhood's going through, right? And that neighborhood's really important in this conversation, but we do get broad-based community feedback anytime where we talk about a road project where people are deeply concerned about how much, like what the infrastructure on the road looks like. And there is time for us to have this conversation and share information with the community because I'm like, they're going to be with us for the next step, maybe even the next step after that. But like, there's questions people have that we're not answering yet, and we just need to make some time to have that conversation with our constituents. Anybody else got a brief one before we wrap that up? So CVM, more information. Then we'll work with a city manager maybe to find a little bit more time. If you could just kind of lead us up to that question about like, are we changing this to from an arterial to a different functional classification? You guys did a fantastic job with this. And you have a neighbor in the back who's been sitting there, just so happy through this whole thing, taking a lot of notes. All right, thank you.
I might have kicked it up to a policy decision by saying that out.
No.
I
That's-
think that I don't think
You-
they said that to us, but that's definitely part of what function is.
Haley, is Chelsea coming with you?
She will be when we get to her portion of the
Okay.
project.
Thanks for your patience. We were just really excited about transportation tonight.
Okay. I'm so excited to be here. It was funny. Today we had a staff meeting and we were talking about what we were grateful for after the Thanksgiving holiday. And I'm actually thankful to be here tonight to talk to you guys again. I know you've been hearing from me a lot. This is pretty much the third meeting that I've had with you this fall. So hopefully the last one for 2025 and you'll see me in 2026. So tonight we're seeking some guidance on the Housing and Design Initiative Code and Plan Update Project, what a mouthful, and also the Climate Friendly Areas Project with my coworker Chelsea Hartman. She's a senior planner and project manager for the Climate Friendly Area. She'll be talking when we get to her portion of the project, hopefully a little later. And also tonight, my consultant is here and they'll be talking a little bit during the project with just some more background information before we get into the policy questions themselves. I apologize, there's a lot in the packet tonight. And of course, I'll be asking you a little later if we run out of time, if it would be better for me to come back to you in January, or if you guys would like to reinitiate the governance committee and prefer to meet that way to address some of these policy questions we might not get to tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Jimin and have him cover the intro.
Hi, good evening, counselors. So Jamin Kimmel with Cascadia Partners. Glad to be with you here tonight. Looking forward to the discussion. So I'm going to start with a reminder about sort of what we're trying to achieve with the Housing and Design project. And we sort of categorize the bigger picture objectives of these code amendments and four buckets here. And we thought this would be helpful to just orient you because there are a number of different code amendments to various districts and overlays, but really they all link back to these sort of four recommendations or objectives. So the first one is to allow housing and a mixed use development in more locations. So what we're specifically talking about there is where housing is paired with a commercial or other non-residential use. And mixed use development is a great thing, and it's I think something that the city of Springfield wants to support. And so we're asking the question, how can we allow that in more places in Springfield? We also want to provide more flexibility for how big commercial space needs to be in a mixed use development and how it's located and sited. Some of the standards there make it impractical to build mixed use projects. And so how can we modify the code to make it a little easier to do that? We'd also look at allowing standalone residential development in more locations. And there are some places in the mixed use or commercial districts where this might be appropriate and consistent with the city's policy goals, but the code doesn't allow that today. And then lastly, to encourage high density housing in all these places where in these commercial and mixed use districts, housing is allowed, to make sure that it's developed at a high density as an efficient use of land. Go to the next slide. So this slide sort of breaks down those four objectives and sort of provides a summary of why we think those are important and consistent with the goals for the project, and then some very brief notes on how and where those recommendations are implemented through the various amendments to the Springfield Development Code and the map. I'm not going to spend much time going through each of those how and where questions. That's really the bulk of the meeting today. But I think if you want to have a refresh and sort of get a higher level picture of how this all fits together, this slide might be helpful to come back to. Okay, go to the next slide, please. So our first topic we want to dive into is where mixed use development is allowed in the city today. And as a reminder, mixed use development is mainly only allowed in the mixed use districts today. And many of those are in the city's proposed climate friendly areas. There's a couple of places where the city is recommending that we expand where mixed use development is allowed in current commercial districts. And so I'm going to take you through that proposal. So the largest area that would be affected in a current commercial district, so not a mixed use district, is along the Main Street or South A Street corridor. And there's generally two sort of parts to this corridor. So and the proposal today would be in the parts that are not in the East Main Refinement Plan area, which is shown in the purple on this map, and I'll address that shortly. So generally everywhere else in this corridor in the community commercial district, proposal would be to allow for mixed use development, so housing with a commercial or non-residential use on sites that meet a couple of criteria. So one, it's actually within that corridor, and so that'd be written into the code to that the location is based on the distance from that those key streets, and then that the site is less than 1 acre in size. And so the intent for this criteria is to preserve those larger sites on the corridor for employment and commercial uses. So those larger commercially zoned sites are more rare in the city, and they're needed to meet the need for jobs as well as housing. And so the intent there is to make sure that those larger sites are preserved for employment uses only. And so mixed use development would not be permitted. There are a number of sites on this corridor that are under 1 acre in size, so it still would permit mixed use development in a lot of places on this corridor. Just a few of those larger sites would be reserved for commercial development.
When we're looking at the map here, are those all parcels that are zoned community commercial, or are they just the 1 acres? It's hard to tell on the map. I'm assuming that's all parcels.
Those are all parcels, yeah.
So one question that I do have specifically around 28th Street in that corridor, in that industrial corridor, how many parcels that are there or less than 1 acre? And I think my concern is how close we would be potentially allowing mixed use development to currently heavy industrial sites, and they're not right on Main Street, but they're right off Main Street.
I'm not familiar enough with that area to know, but I know Haley has done some mapping with city staff, so I might see if she is familiar with that specific area, and also know she has some standards proposed for when a housing or mixed use development is adjacent to an industrial district. So Haley, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So did you say 20th, Mayor?
28th.
28th.
And asking me to be patient and let you get to the part of the presentation also is
no worries.
A reasonable answer.
So it was attachment 5. You're looking in your packet. I apologize. There were a lot of attachments in this packet, but this one in particular, if you're looking at the map, this is just for the commercial districts, and right up in the right-hand corner, there's actually a list of the properties that are abutting industrial. It's 23 in that segment. This would be between 14th and 28th. So you're seeing the ones that are highlighted abutting industrial.
I'm going to hop in because this is one of my number one concerns too. So I appreciate the mayor bringing this up because I think that's I'm looking forward to chatting about it, but that feels like a lot of properties to me. And that's one of the areas of concern for me is the residential right up to the industrial in this particular area. And I think the conversation we had earlier is definitely informs how I'm thinking about this too, because all of when we talk, we tend to have these conversations separately around housing and mixed use, and then we get to like who's going, what kind of trucks and bicycles and walkers and things are going to be happening along those areas. So I want to look more because this is a concern for me is this in melding together of industrial and residential in those particular areas.
We get too sidetracked. Why don't we keep going and then we'll get into the discussion.
Great. So we covered the generally on the community commercial district where mixed use development would be permitted. Can you switch back to that slide? I just want to call out specifically the East Main area. Mixed use development is already permitted there through the refinement plan, and there are no changes recommended at this stage. So that allowance would continue in the future. And go ahead and go to the next slide. So outside of the Main Street corridor, the other district that we think would be appropriate to allow for mixed use development is the neighborhood commercial districts. I think these are natural locations to allow for a mixed use because they're already in with usually close to or sort of embedded in residential neighborhoods. And they're smaller sites that are not needed for those larger employment uses. And so the proposal would be for mixed use development to be permitted in that NC district. Okay, and with that, I think I'm going to hand it back off to Haley for some discussion questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, first policy question of the night. So I took quite a few of these concepts to our Housing and Design Technical Advisory Committee on November 12th. They had great, fantastic feedback for me, which you will probably see if you're read through the council briefing memo, but I'll be talking about them a little bit tonight too. So the first question was about allowing single unit dwellings detached in the mixed use residential district. So currently we do allow them, but we are proposing a minimum density in the mixed-use residential district of 20 units per net acre. And that would require a maximum lot size of about 2,178 square feet, so rather small. Generally, in order to achieve that density, the developer would need to go vertical. So, generally that is not what we think of when we think of a single unit dwelling. So the question is if you support retaining the allowance for detached single unit dwellings in the mixed use residential district. When I looked, it was very hard to find any properties that were single unit dwellings in the mixed use residential districts currently, even though we allow them. And the TAC, when I took this question to them, had mixed opinions about continuing to allow it. Some thought that it would be misleading to developers, as it may not be feasible to meet that minimum density. Again, we talked about that minimum lot size is very small. Others wanted to try to meet that density option. So.
Okay, what do we think? Let's see. Go ahead, Councilor Rodley.
I also have mixed feelings about this. I mean, I think yes, we want to I sort of started looking at it backwards. Yes, we want to reach the minimum density standards. Is this going to help us get there? Probably. Are there going to be some repercussions? Probably. So I don't think I want to pick this as a hill to die on, but I'm not like 100%, but I'm an okay. All right, maybe one step over the line.
Anybody else? Councilor Stout.
I just like giving developers as many options as possible.
Councilor Buck.
Conceptually, it seems rather difficult to find the type of housing within 20 single units within an acre. And again, if we're talking about a structure that goes vertical, are we still considering that a single dwelling unit? Because to me, that's more like a townhome kind of feel. And that makes more sense to me. Trying to put small units that are not in that design that are 20 standalone units, I don't think that I would support. But if we're including a townhome style where it's like here's one physical structure, but it technically has multiple units in it, we're still saying that fits in then that makes more sense to me.
And in the climate friendly areas, we do have to allow townhomes too. I'm not going to go into too much detail.
No, I'm just trying to make sure I understand the definition we're working on single family, because you said it's not traditionally what we think of.
It's a vertical. Yeah.
I'd be more open to the vertical, but if we're talking about a single structure then I'm not super supportive of that idea.
All right. That's what Michael.
I was just going to go back to what Councilor Stout said. I would support anything that opens it up to the developer to kind of decide what fits and what's feasible.
I think I'm in the let's give as many options as possible.
Okay.
Even though that might be challenging to make that work, the math makes a lot of sense. Like that it would be challenging. So, but let's leave as many options as possible.
Great. And I'm gonna go piggyback on the next question, which is similar, and this is about allowing middle housing in the mixed-use residential and mixed-use commercial districts, again, if they meet that minimum density standards. The TAC question, the proposed density standards of 20 units per net acre, again, if it could be difficult to meet that standard. One, wondered if we had looked into any scenario planning studies for small lots. That's something we can continue to look into if the city council is in favor of continuing to allow middle housing in the mixed use residential and mixed use commercial districts. Some were in favor of reducing that minimum density standards, believing that it placed a burden on housing. But I do want to point out that right now we only have density standards in the mixed use residential district.
Yeah, I'm seeing some head nods.
Great.
Okay.
That's easy. We can move on. Okay. So the next question I know we're itching to get to. This is about applying maximum height standards when a mixed use development with residential uses abut an industrial district. So on the screen, it was a little difficult for me to find some examples, but this is the potential future mixed use employment district near Laura Street, which I know we talked about previously at another council meeting. So the TAC kind of questioned the intent of this, if we were building housing in an industrial district or allowing housing above an existing commercial or industrial use. So they thought of this as like a live work unit. Why were we proposing to limit the height? They kind of just didn't see that as, is that enough to reduce kind of the compatibility or negative impacts of residential in close proximity to industrial. So some were in favor of not requiring a maximum height for residential uses, but they also acknowledged that right now the market does not really support those taller buildings. So it's really going to depend on what the future market holds.
Councilor Redley.
I think, and to what some of my colleagues said earlier about allowing for as many options for developers as possible, I think I am in the not applying a maximum height standard on this one, and seeing how it develops. I know we can come back to this if we need to, but it seems like one of those things that feels a little bit arbitrary. Like now we say this because of how things are. So I'm open to not doing this.
I actually have a technical question before. Do we know? So this is over in my neighborhood, right? And some of the challenges that I've historically seen with residences touching industrial is really around sound. Is there like any thinking around is there any impact from the industrial section with higher buildings?
I think that was a concern that we didn't quite reach consensus on. The proposal initially could be, if you install a wall or you install landscaping, does that reduce the noise? And I don't know if we have clear results on that. It would probably require more research on our end to determine if reducing the height or building walls or installing more landscaping would make a difference in the noise.
I don't think I'm concerned about the height in principle. I think I'm more concerned about sort of design standards and how and they attach the noise, because the neighbors that I've interacted with over the years that have this particular problem, it is a high impact problem that impacts people's sleep and livelihoods and all of those things. So if the TAC or you guys as staff researched and go, okay, look, we just have to include, standards around the wall. If you're going to do it, I'm fine with that. Or if there's other additional research to, deal with the noise issue, I could be fine with this. But I think pulling on that thread a little bit more is gonna help us. Anybody else?
Okay, we'll keep going. So the next proposal that I know you guys have heard from me before, but we're just going to reiterate and make sure that we have clear consensus on this, is preparing to replace the Booth Kelly Mixed Use District and the Mixed Use Light Medium Industrial Community Commercial District with the Mixed Use Employment District. So some of the key changes with this were to the light medium industrial community commercial property, and that's along Pioneer Parkway Q and 126, where that multiple unit housing would be allowed as a second story use if part of a mixed use development. So you would still have commercial industrial on the ground floor and residential above. We'd allow a wider range of retail, office, and institutional uses than we currently allow today. So again, we're not trying to limit the uses, we're trying to encourage more development in those areas. And then we would do away with the limit that is currently there for commercial uses to be no more than 40% of the district. So right now it's limited to 40% can be commercial in that area. And then to Booth Kelly Mixed Use, the only proposed change that is key here is that we would say that heavy manufacturing and production uses would require a discretionary use permit, where currently they're permitted outright. So, so the important question here is, first, for Booth Kelly Mixed Use, the code says that residential uses must be encouraged as a second story use above commercial and industrial uses and must not occupy more than 35% of the mixed use employment district. So in keeping with the existing policy language, does council support residential uses in the mixed use employment district only as part of a mixed use building or development? So again, that minimum of 60% of the total ground floor area of all buildings on the site must be occupied by a commercial or industrial use. And then when I took this to the TAC, there was broad support again for that 60% of the ground floor area being a commercial or industrial use, but residential uses on the second story of a building.
Councilor Rudley.
I'll go first and then if people can. I mean, I think I'm okay with this. I do want to go back though. The one thing I want to poke around a little bit about is that permit. Now there's a discretionary use permit because we're changing the land use. That feels to me like something that people have been able to do. We're suddenly making it harder for them to do. To what end, I guess, is my question. If it's it just feels like there's like some extra layers in this one that are cumbersome and confusing. And I'm not trying to pick on anybody, just like this one just feels like we're moving some things around and making it a little bit harder. So I'm interested if other people see that it would make sense to have a permit for something that people have already been allowed to do, even though they still could do it. It just feels like something that is cumbersome.
Councilor Stone.
I don't mind a lot of the language in the suggestion, but again, discretionary permit, I think, is a huge turnoff for encouraging industrial development. And I know industrial development is slow right now, but that said, I think that would substantially change the character of what we're looking for, as opposed to not. Even if functionally a person could come down to City Hall and get a permit, that extra step with respect to the private sector is going to be a huge turnoff. So I would not support that.
What was the logic at the TAC behind adding the discretionary use permit?
I believe I might ask Jam in this one because I think this came from Cascadia.
Okay.
Yeah, so the current LMI/CC district is a little less clear on how it would permit a use that would be classified as heavy manufacturing and production. So I think many of the uses that are there today would be classified as light manufacturing and production, and those are permitted outright and would continue to be in the future. But heavy manufacturing is currently requires a discretionary use permit in the light industrial zone generally. But because this one district is a little bit the way the regulations were written, it was a little unclear that our interpretation of something that would be most similar to the current regulations would be to continue to require a discretionary use permit for that heavy manufacturing and production. And so there's that part of it with LMI CC, but then we're also trying to apply the same district now to what's currently BKMU. And so what we were looking for is how can we make sure we're trying to not change too much of the actual regulations that apply on the ground to things that aren't housing. And so the discretionary use permit there was really just trying to find something that was most like the current standards in the LMI CC district that just happens to require more of heavy manufacturing and production uses in the BKMU district. So the thinking behind that was mainly trying not to change too much of what the current regulations are, but the discretionary use permit in general would give the city an opportunity to evaluate a use that may have more impacts on a residential within a development that has residential uses close by. So that's the heavy manufacturing and production. Things that get classified in that are more likely to have an impact. And so that discretionary use permit gives the city the opportunity to maybe attach some special conditions to that application and mitigate for some of those impacts.
And what's an example of a heavy production use? A heavy industrial use versus a light industrial use?
Yeah, there's some like characteristics that the code would require the use would be evaluated based on those. I'm thinking of one like it's trying to figure out whether it's light manufacturing or heavy manufacturing as the key decision there. And heavy manufacturing might involve more things that are like a larger product that has more different components coming into it, potentially has more impact of like you were talking about with noise and sound, and potentially other impacts, more truck traffic. And so trying to come up with a specific example, but the idea is that those ones that have more impacts would be subject to additional review.
So I'm going to look at the staff. Is Roseboro, would that be a heavy manufacturer or a light manufacturer? Yeah.
I've got the code up.
Yeah.
So this is from the industrial use category section, and I think the same language would apply. So I pulled that up while Haley was doing other stuff. Happy to read from it. Heavy manufacturing and production refers to manufacturing from raw materials, processing from raw materials, or assembly of goods is kind of the brief definition. Examples of heavy manufacturing and production uses include, but aren't limited to, lumber mills, pulp and paper mills, other wood products, manufacturing or processing of metals or metal products, including enameling and galvanizing, biotechnology, manufacturing or processing of chemical, rubber, leather, clay, bone, plastic, stone, concrete, glass materials, related products, food and beverage and related manufacturing, textiles and apparel, woodworking, cabinet makers, production of energy, paper products, other similar materials or manufacturing processing. So I think with Kelly, we have several tenants that fall under that category currently.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Radley.
Thank you. And I appreciate people taking time to dig into this because I think it has helped to clarify that I am a big no on it. And I'll share that one of the things I was thinking around the lens is I appreciate that folks are trying to like because it's messy. So we're trying to get the code to fit into this place, and we've named it this. So now everything has to fit into this. But I think we also have to look at it as like, how are people living and working and being in Springfield, and try to get our regulations to get either to support that or get out of the way. I don't think we want to come in and like change the way we're using this to make it fit a thing. So because we have those businesses in there, and I just don't want to make it harder for people that have been able to do the things that they've been able to do them. So I'm a no on the discretionary.
Right. Anybody else? I think the question that I'm walking away from this is like I'm a no on making a discretionary use. Is I think specifically to Booth Kelly, the portion I'm thinking about is an economic site, right? That is one of the few places that has a rail, available rail spur and is a solid for industrial development. So I think I'm trying to weigh, are we choosing it for it to be a housing site and a mixed use site? Or are we choosing it to be, a heavy industrial site? Because I think what's going to happen is effectively it's going to be one of those. We've got to kind of think through that, and we've got to ask ourselves the question like, are the uses that Christina just read compatible with, having people housed there on a regular basis?
Yeah.
So, any?
Can I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
that I think that maybe Haley and haven't anticipated, but based on what I'm hearing would help me in reviewing draft code? In the industrial districts, in the heavy industrial district, there are a number of specific heavy industrial uses that require discretionary use approval, even in the heavy industrial district. Would it be consistent with council's direction that those limited heavy industrial uses be subject to similar review processes in these areas, or is it your intent? So examples are waste-related uses. So like the transfer station's a good example. Explosives or fireworks manufacturing, automobile wrecking operations, slaughterhouses are I think the main examples. I think there's some industrial source, for example, needed a discretionary use approval because they use explosive gases. And so that was like a process that they had to go through, not in any of these areas, but as a recent example.
So your question would be like, should we apply the same standards as the current zone?
My understanding is council's generally giving direction to staff to apply the same level of review. So those uses that require discretionary use approval in industrial zones would still require that potentially for Booth Kelly.
Yes.
And LMICC. Okay.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, you guys jumped ahead to the fifth one.
Well, we knew we were checking them off early.
Yeah. So can I get just a clarification real quick on number 4? Is there support then for 60% of the ground floor area and residential above on the second story? And this would apply to the Booth Kelly mixed use and the mixed use LMICC district.
Yeah, I think, yep.
Okay. All right. Excellent. So we'll go 4, 5, and 6. So this last question in the mixed use districts is about the conceptual development plan, development area plan policies. This is in the downtown refinement plan. And there's also a little bit of code about it in our development code. It's a lot of these refinement plan policies are covered in the council brief memo. So hopefully you guys read it. But I just want to talk about that the reason we're talking about it is that in particular for the conceptual development plan, there's really no approval standards in the code, or they're only required in the Booth Kelly mixed use and the campus industrial district. So we only have those applications for those 2 districts in particular. So again, the question would be kind of how do we want to handle this type of application? We can retain the existing policies and the existing code requirements, which would say that we have to continue to require a conceptual development plan. But generally that conceptual development plan applies to the entire Booth Kelly mixed use district. Or we can go into a different process. We could incorporate some of these policies into the development code to be addressed through a master plan process or site plan review process. A master plan process, again, usually it's 5 acres or greater, and the applicant desires to phase the project over 7 years. So that is kind of a similar application process to that conceptual development plan. And that'd kind of be like a bigger process, bigger application long term, as opposed to a site plan review application, which could be for a minor redevelopment, minor construction. And we can define what that means in the development code. And then finally, for option C, we would remove some of these policies from the downtown refinement plan altogether. We would not, we would not replace it. We just strip that requirement.
It's here. Go ahead.
I feel like I should probably know the answer to this, but I'm just curious what the requirement, what the existing requirements, are doing for us and how they're helpful currently. Because I can see how they could be viewed as barriers. But I'm trying to think, okay, why are they in place? What are they creating guardrails for? And for whatever reason, that's not coming to top of mind right now.
Yeah, the policies in particular that the conceptual development plan was kind of designed to protect or guide were some of the mill race improvements that we did and developed and completed around 2017. So we've already kind of done a conceptual development plan for Booth Kelly. We do keep that on record. We do keep those policies and documentation, how we meet those downtown refinement plan policies, especially for mill race, restoration, stormwater improvements, things like that. But that doesn't necessarily address kind of, again, that long-term, how do we want Booth Kelly to look? So
am I hearing you correctly that we put those in place for a purpose? It's kind of served that purpose, and maybe it's kind of time to say, okay, this has done what it needed to do, and maybe it's time to let that one go.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would depend on if we think we have satisfied these policies.
Councilor Wadley.
Thank you for poking around on this one, Councilor Buck, because I was trying to unpeel it. And one of my goals as we've moved through this process is to try to come out with less regulations than we had going in. So for reals. Just to make it easier for people to live and do all the things that they need to do. So I think I'm in a middle place on this one, as you all have talked it through. Like, I still want to protect the mill race and I want to protect the water and I want us to be paying attention to that. So I don't want us to completely strip those away. So is there a way for us to do, I think you say something in here, like a phasing or a come back and talk about it, or put in some guardrails, but get rid of the ones that we no longer need?
I think that's the intent. I would argue kind of a master plan process is to, again, to look at those policies, look at that phase plan, what it's going to look like long term. But I have talked to the city manager's office about, is this kind of a barrier to redevelopment or some minor improvements on the Booth Kelly site? And they have said, yes, it can be a barrier to development. If we need to do a minor improvement and then the code says the only way you can do that is you have to submit a conceptual development plan application.
So is thinning it here an option, right? Like I think what you're hearing is like we can if there's no impact to sort of removing it, right? Then then I think we're open to doing that. And if there's a scenario where from a staff perspective you're looking at it and saying, hey, in this very specific scenario we're concerned about it, then I think we're open to a much more narrow scenario.
Great, sounds good. All right, I'm going to have Chelsea join me to talk about climate-friendly areas.
Okay, I'll see what I can get through and then I guess pause whenever you want for figuring out how do you want to handle the rest of the questions. So we have Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Chelsea Hartman here for Climate Friendly Areas. I was last here with you all on this topic back in February when you gave us direction to designate the Glenwood Riverfront to become our primary climate friendly area, and then downtown and Mohawk will be our secondary. I'll just be talking about downtown and Mohawk tonight since those are being implemented with our climate friendly area overlay district, and those work in conjunction with the base mixed use districts that Haley was just talking about. We will come back to talk about the Glenwood Riverfront in 2026, and we've been coordinating closely with the Glenwood Master Plan team to make sure the intent of those changes that are moving forward will be maintained. So in the downtown and Mohawk CFAs, we'll continue to allow or to not allow standalone residential on lots with frontage on arterial streets in the mixed-use commercial district. So we talked a little bit about arterials in the previous work session. Those streets in the CFAs are Main Street, South A, Pioneer Parkway, 14th, Centennial, and Olympic. And that is really to maintain our employment land supply on these key corridors. For mixed-use commercial lots that do not have frontage on arterials and on all of our mixed-use employment sites, so what Booth Kelly mixed use will become, standalone housing will be allowed. And for mixed-use residential, that's already the case. And then lastly, mixed-use and standalone non-residential will be allowed throughout the downtown and Mohawk CFAs. And the intent of this is really to try to balance opening up more opportunities for housing and maintaining our employment land supply. I only have 2 questions for you tonight on the CFA overlay district. The first one is about if the city should prohibit or limit new automobile-oriented and automobile-dependent uses in the CFA overlay district. The state rules do not require cities to prohibit these uses, but there are rules for walkable design standards. Currently, existing auto-oriented and auto-dependent uses within the downtown exception area, which covers most of the mixed-use commercial area within the downtown CFA, may remain or expand as permitted uses. And staff is proposing to expand that allowance to the entire CFA overlay to allow for growth of existing auto uses, but to prohibit new ones. The main area where this standard would be expanded to apply is the part of the downtown CFA between 8th and 14th Streets. Based on the TAC feedback, staff outlined a few potential approaches that are listed in order from most to least restrictive. We could continue to prohibit new auto uses while allowing existing uses. This is most consistent with our existing adopted policy and code. Another option would be to be more specific about particular uses that should be prohibited instead of referring to the broad use categories. A third option would be to allow as discretionary use subject to specific standards. And then finally, we could just allow them outright as permitted uses. So I'll turn it over to you all for your thoughts on this one.
Councilor Rodley.
Just want to say out loud on behalf of my colleagues, these are a lot of very big decisions in a very short amount of time. I think that when you said this is on Main Street between something and something, right?
8th and 14th would
Okay.
be the big area where it would change.
So our Main Street is used for so many things, right? And whenever we try to make changes, we have to take into consideration the truck usage and the bus usage, and all of the things that are happening there. So that is what is making me concerned about saying we're gonna clamp down, we're not gonna allow additional things, because this feels counterintuitive to me we are going to allow businesses and we want to encourage people to do all the things, but we're also going to make it harder for you to do all the things. So I think I don't want to do this, but I'm also really interested to hear how my colleagues are reading this. Because I just, the less things we prohibit or limit while we're trying to encourage growth seems to make sense to me.
Councilor Buck.
Appreciate your comments there, Corey. I guess my thought is, as I look at that map and I think about part of that area, along 14th, you're talking about the hospital. There's numerous clinics down there. The Willamette Lane Park is right next to that. And then I kind of think about that area, and we're talking about automobile-oriented independent uses. I mean, those are high trafficked areas, and so I'm not sure how that's how people are going to get to those, the hospital and clinics and things like that, whether it be buses or they're driving themselves. And so I'm having a hard time conceptualizing the limitations given some of the things that are down in that area. And maybe I'm missing something here, but
Could you clarify the northern limit on the map for the CFA look?
Yeah. So for the downtown, thank you. For downtown, it's really along Main Street between 8th and 14th is the area that would be this new. So right now in the nodal development area that exists in downtown and Mohawk, this is pretty much already the case of prohibiting a lot of auto-oriented uses. And what we're really talking about is this would be a new thing that would apply along Main Street between 8th and 14th, where there are some auto uses like Lithia, Toyota, there's some gas stations. I think the real big question is, do you want to allow more new uses like that? Or would we want to just allow these existing uses to continue or to be able to expand? Or do we kind of not care and just allow whatever to continue moving forward?
Can I, sorry.
Yep.
Does everybody understand the difference between auto-oriented use and auto-dependent use?
So maybe help
Claire?
us with that.
Okay.
And
Yeah. So I think the main difference, so auto-oriented is really drive-throughs essentially is a good example of that, where vehicles are an integral part of the use. The auto-dependent is where vehicles are basically served by the use. So things like vehicle repair, gas station, car wash, or auto sales.
can we split them?
Yeah, I think that was one of the things the TAC suggested was these are really broad use categories. We could be a lot more specific about certain things we don't want to see instead of just so prohibitive.
I think my head we want the community to grow and develop, and I think if you think about the descriptions you have, as maybe we can sort of crack them, in half. Like I'm fine with drive-throughs, right? Like I'm fine with, but like in that corridor about allowing new sort of repair shops or or new things that remove buildings. It seems like we've already chosen from a policy perspective for it to develop with higher density because it's in the CFA. So maybe if we could get probably more alignment around, hey, those things that are more auto dependent that would allow people to interface with the business easier, like the drive-throughs versus, hey, like, look, Lithia's been down there. They've been a great partner for a while, right? Like, but maybe we don't need 3 new Lithia dealerships down there.
Mhm.
Lithia's been a great partner for a while, but I'm using it as an example. Okay, we've got a ton of people queuing outside. I think, Nancy, if we might, off of agenda review, we might have had more time on work session next week. And if there's another half an hour that we can continue this conversation, I feel like the materials aren't going to change, but we're only about halfway through this conversation.
Mayor, I do believe we have some additional time, perhaps about 15 minutes left, unless we move something else from the agenda. But we can perhaps discuss that.
Okay, well, yeah, let's talk about it to see if we can squeeze some more time in, because if we feel like we're only about halfway through this, and I'd like to, if we can get it a little bit further along before we hit January.
Right. We'll get some time on the agenda. It does warrant further discussion. I see our clerk is making note of that now.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the work session. We will reconvene here in a couple of minutes. I'm going to start waving at folks to. I'm going to call the regular session of the Springfield City Council to order with a roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon.
Here.
Councilor Weber.
Here.
Councilor Moe.
Here.
Councilor Rodley.
Here.
Councilor Blackwell.
Here.
Councilor Buck.
here.
And Councilor Stout.
Here. Thank you. All right. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. There are 2 items designated for public testimony this evening under public hearings and business from the audience. If you're attending, excuse me, in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the front of the council chambers and turn them into the city recorder. If you're joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak to either of those times, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in person in the council chambers, and then anyone who has raised their virtual hand. First item, please.
Mayor, the first item is the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
All right, can we call the vote, Neil?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
Counselor Buck,
Yes.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes, 6 yeses, 0 nos. Next item, please.
Next item is you have one public hearing this evening. Public hearing item number 1 is consideration of exemption from the City of Springfield's Public Contracting Code to allow for the use of construction manager, general contractor, CMGC project delivery system for construction of the Springfield City Hall Deferred Maintenance and Department Consolidation Project. Jeff Pascal is here for this item.
Thank you, Neil. Good evening, Council, Mayor. Tonight, we're asking the council to hold a public hearing to consider authorizing use of the construction manager, general contractor, or CMGC delivery method for the City Hall Deferred Maintenance and Department Consolidation Project. As presented to the council at earlier work session, City Hall has extensive deferred maintenance needs and outdated system that must be replaced to ensure safe and reliable operations. Because these systems are interconnected throughout the building, and because construction must occur while City Hall remains occupied, the project requires careful phasing, sequencing, and coordination. Also, we have long lead time materials and constraints that further increase the project's complexity. This makes this project really suitable for the CMGC methodology. The CMGC methodology allows us to bring the contractor in earlier to work with the design team. It helps us get better costing, helps us coordinate better with phasing, and also do better valuation and engineering valuation so that we can get the cost down to hopefully reasonable. Like we had stated, we want to try and get that down around $12 million. To use the CMGC method, council must adopt findings showing that this alternative contracting approach will not encourage favoritism or reduce competition. So part of the packet that you've seen is that we've outlined those findings for you to review, and then then asking you to open a public hearing and then consider that methodology. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? All right, I'm going to open a public hearing. I don't have any cards for this item. Neil, do we have anybody online?
We have 2 hands online, and I'll ask that they put their hand down if it's not for this item, and then they can put them right back up. Okay, no hands for this item.
All right, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And
I move to approve a resolution authorizing an exemption to bidding requirements pursuant to ORS 279C.3351 and Springfield Public Contracting Ordinance SMC 2.700 through 2.713 for construction of the Springfield City Hall Deferred Maintenance and Department Consolidation Project.
Second?
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell,
Yes.
Counselor Buck,
Nay.
and Counselor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 1 no. Next item, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, the next item is business from the audience.
Okay, let me tell. Right now, I've got 20 cards for this, and before we start calling folks, we only have 20 minutes for this item, so we need to discuss if we're going to shorten folks, if we're going to extend the item, or what we could go an extra. We go 40 minutes and check in and see how we're doing. We kind of need to make a decision on how we're. I said nods enough, Mary Bridget, or do I need to get them to put it in a motion?
I think what I would recommend at 40 minutes, do the check-in and see what you want to do, and then you can take a vote and a motion depending on what you want to do then.
Okay, so right now we're saying we're gonna allow 3 minutes. We're gonna extend the time at 40 minutes, and then at 40 minutes, we're going to check in to see how many cards we have. Does that sound good? All right. Hi. Thanks for coming. I know it is a lot to come down to City Hall and get organized in a big room to testify. Thanks for a little bit of patience while we get organized. What I'm going to do is everybody's got 3 minutes, but there's 2 microphones up here. So I'm going to call you guys 2 at a time, and then we'll go between each person for 3 minutes, and then we'll call the next two folks up. All right? All right. You need to state your name and then just whatever you're comfortable with. It could be your city, your address, your ward number if you know it, just some basic information so that we understand what part of the city you're from. The first 2 speakers that I have are Donna Riddle and Tom Berglund. Just 1 second, Slynn. If you hit the button, it should go green when you're ready. Perfect.
I'm Donna Riddle. I live at 19th and I Street in Springfield. And I'm here speaking as a person who has white privilege, but I'm also speaking as a person, a mom of a brown child who I have a lot of fear in my heart because I'm worried that ICE might grab him, even though he's a Native American and is more American than any of the rest of us here. But ICE is grabbing people who are brown and they're deporting them. And I really want to hear Springfield weigh in on the fact that we are a sanctuary city, that brown people shouldn't be afraid to go to school or go to the grocery store or just live their lives without feeling that they might be arrested and deported without any process. So please, please speak up and acknowledge that this is a sanctuary county, it's a sanctuary city, and we need to hear from you.
Okay. So before we get too far into this for the evening, there's no signs, there's no clapping, no disruptions in City Hall. I'm glad we got that one out of the way early on because we got quite a few more cards to go. So thank you so much. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm Tom Berglund. I live in Eugene. I have also have grandchildren who are have Hispanic father, and I know a lot of people in Springfield. I worked here for 40 years. I'm a descendant of lost wagon train pioneers. I was a Republican for 50 years. I'm just saying, I represent what Springfield was not too long ago. But I gotta say, I really believe that we in the United States need to follow our Constitution. And I think I always thought that was like Supreme Court stuff, but I really believe that down at the local level that we have things that we can do and say also. And I believe in due process. And I think that we need to make sure that that is employed at all times in all of the jurisdictions around here. I think that search and seizures without any kind of warrant has got to be dealt with. And I believe that our police have the power to do that, to deal with that. I believe that we are all created equal and that we need to treat everyone with dignity. And dragging people out of cars is not treating them with dignity. I believe that law enforcement must identify themselves, wear something so you know you're not being kidnapped, right? Thank you very much for not wearing a mask. Name tag. Appreciate that. Okay. And in America, I believe that we do not stop people based on their color or other physical characteristics. So I just say, and I was going to invoke white privilege also. I want to leverage what white privilege I have and say that I want us as a community to stand behind the Hispanic community in resistance to these unjust intrusions into the heart of their community. Our schools, that's where I've heard of the most fear. Our schools, where the kids are. Come on. And the resentment of this building toward the federal government. And I don't want us, our town, our local communities to be part of that. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Nayela Cisneros and Timothy Herrera.
Hello, my name is Nayeli, but my name is not important. What matters is that I come from an immigrant family, and my family has now been in the United States 3 generations. We've called the beautiful state of Oregon our home for the last 18 years. I'm also a mother of 4 children, all born and raised here, who are now becoming young adults and are being directly impacted by what is happening in our community. I'm here today because ICE activity has created fear and confusion throughout our neighborhoods. My family, my neighbors, my people, the people I love are being affected, and whether or not someone has directly have had contact with ICE, the fear alone harms entire communities. It tears families apart emotionally long before the physical happens. Even after 3 generations in this country, that fear still echoes. I know that it feels like what it feels like to live with uncertainty, to feel like the ground can be pulled out from under you at any moment, and not to know if the people you care about will be safe and will be home for dinner. No family in Springfield or Eugene should have to live with that fear. No child should have to wonder if their parent will come home. And no community should be kept in the dark about what's happening in our own streets. My children grew up here and this is their home. They go to school here and they work here. They contribute to this city. We all volunteer as a family. And now, as they step into adulthood, they're watching friends, neighbors, and families live in fear. They're watching the community they love shift to a place where people don't feel safe calling for help or going about their daily lives. That is not the Oregon I have raised my children in for nearly 2 decades now. This matters to all of us because when people are afraid to go to work, to take their kids to school, or even to call for help, our entire city becomes not safe. Fear does not build strong communities. Transparency and protection does. Springfield and Eugene value family, safety, and community. Well, now is the moment to show that those values really do mean something to us. So today I'm asking the mayor and city council to protect our families, be transparent with the public, and take immediate action. And I'm joining my community in to call the following urgent demands. Declare a state emergency. Publicly guarantee zero cooperation with ICE. Pass a Springfield Sanctuary resolution. End flock cameras and surveillance systems. Require ICE to identify themselves to local police. Provide real-time public alerts when ICE is active. Fund local community support organizations. Create emergency family protection fund for families taken by ICE. And fund the library, not flock cameras. These steps will truly keep families informed and supported, including long-standing families like mine, and many other immigrant families who make this community vibrant, hardworking, and very strong. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Timothy?
Hello, City Council. My name is Timothy. I'm a project specialist with an organization called Plaza de Nuestra Comunidad. They have an office here in Springfield that provides social services, education, family services, mental health therapy, and a lot of the community members are scared and that they're not going to come home, their family members are not going to come home. And if we look at the nationwide data of the ICE detentions recently, majority of people don't have criminal records. They're targeting our families, our friends, our community members, people who make our community what it is. So I'm asking you all to pass a sanctuary resolution, also to require that ICE agents can't use face masks and that they have to be able to identify themselves properly, and that you all guarantee no cooperation with ICE or Border Patrol and uphold the Oregon sanctuary policies, and also to reinforce it with your own sanctuary resolution. And yeah, and there's going to be a lot of comments that touch a similar vein tonight, and I just really want you to think carefully about the situation we're in today, and also just take a look at the historical record of how Oregon has used immigrants and have targeted immigrants and have tried to create protection for immigrants and then target them again. And we really have to end that cycle and really have to create protection for people and for families and for the people who make this state what it is. So that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two people I have are Amanda Ligon and Ty Weisenflu.
Oh, this is nerve-wracking. Hi, I'm Amanda. I live a couple blocks from here. I come to you as a neighbor and as a mental health therapist who supports local families. I'm reporting back from the front lines of suffering in our communities, and I must tell you, I cannot do my job until you do yours. Last September, the Supreme Court issued an order that allowed ICE agents to stop anyone they assumed to be here illegally simply because of the color of their skin, the language they speak, or the job they have. This means that every single Black and brown resident of Springfield has become a target of these unknown masked agents who are ripping folks off the street and sending them to countries they aren't even from, or disappearing them altogether. I repeat, I cannot do my job until you do yours. I cannot help children manage their anxiety when their parents might be kidnapped on their way to pick them up from school. I cannot help adults manage their depression and hopelessness when they are watching their families and neighbors disappear one by one without so much as a breath of resistance from their leaders. How am I supposed to help folks recover from PTSD when they are actively taking on more trauma every time they leave their house and have to fear for their lives because of the color of their skin? Our community deserves strong leaders that will take a stand against authoritarianism and racism. We demand that you declare a state of emergency and implement a public alert system about ICE activity. We demand that you keep Flock, a corporate-owned mass surveillance company, out of our beautiful city. We don't have to wait to see how Flock will harm our communities. We can already see that Flock data has been misused in high-profile cases, like in Texas, where a police officer used the system to search for a woman who had an abortion, and a police chief who allegedly used it to track his ex-wife. I understand the desire to reduce crime in our communities, but Flock and ICE have nothing to do with what keeps our communities safer. 73.6% of folks who are held in ICE detention have no criminal conviction, and many of those that do, it's just minor offenses, like traffic offenses. What actually reduces crime and protects our communities is giving people access to resources like food and shelter, and having their back when racist masked thugs threaten to steal our families. In fact, one of the most powerful things we could do to reduce crime in our community is fully fund the library. Researchers have found that as library funding per person went up, this was a study done from 1995 to 2016, national crime rates dropped by almost the exact same amount. There's lots of studies, y'all can look this up. History has its eyes on you, counselors. What will our children say about our bravery or our cowardice? Will they hold their head up high and tell stories of how we came together to keep each other safe? Or will they speak in hushed tones about our shameful silence? You choose today.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ty Weisenflu. I live in Ward 4. I'm going to try to keep this brief because there's a a lot of people here that need to speak. I sent an email out to all of you guys. Mayor, thank you for responding to it. It was in reference to the City Club meeting a few weeks ago, where the next day a camera was activated. In that meeting, I asked the chief if she was sure these things were off, and if they were to be reactivated by Flock, if she would know about it. She assured me that that was the case, and obviously the next day that was not the case. I think the problem here is we have technology that people are learning about how that technology works from the people that are making it. There's doesn't seem to be a lot of investigation as to how these things work through other people that have done research on them, people in this city and other research scientists and so forth that have seen how insecure these things are. And they're, basically like IoT devices, like your, fridge that connects to the internet, not very secure. So in that meeting, I asked for the cameras to be covered. Chief said that she would look into it. I don't I think the deputy chief said that Flock had covered up that camera, and that was their decision, not SPD's. So I'm not sure why it would be so hard to just cover these up, give some trust to the public, and unless you guys are going to be removing them shortly, I think covering them up would be a pretty reasonable thing to do and gain trust back from the community. That being said, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The next two items that I have are Callie Ackland and Lupe Aguano.
Callie Ackland, resident of Ward 4. My address is on file. Before I get started with my prepared comments, I do want to say that I agree with what's been said about ICE so far, especially the early comment from the mother of four, her list of demands. I think that was a fantastic list that you all should seriously consider to protect all the residents of Springfield. For my prepared comments, I wanted to take this opportunity to highlight key findings from the Fiscal Stability Task Force's Summer Feedback Survey. 73% of those survey respondents said that they were already somewhat or very familiar with Springfield's budget challenges. 53% of survey respondents said that the task force recommendations did not offer practical and balanced solutions to the budget issues. And 32% said they weren't sure if the recommendations were practical and balanced. Most importantly, of the 152 respondents, they overall ranked a payroll tax as the most helpful of the recommendations and cutting the library budget as the least helpful of the 9 recommendations. And I want to emphasize that again. Of the Springfield community members who responded to the survey on the task force recommendations, they overall ranked the library budget cut as the least helpful for improving Springfield's budget stability. Next, I want to share part of a specific comment left by one survey respondent that resonated with me. It saddens me to think that the library may soon lose the staff or funding needed to support something that I see do so much good in the community. When the ice storm blew my internet out for 10 days, I was able to work in the library. Nearly every time I go, I see adults at the computers who may not otherwise have access to resources to create a resume or search for a job. My child is never the only one spending hours in the stacks finding books for research projects and pleasure. In short, the library gives so much to so many people in our city. There are so few third spaces like it that offer physical space and resources to anyone who wants to access them without requiring a purchase of some kind. So few places that offer free children's programming to ensure kiddos from babies to teens have a safe space to explore, learn, and socialize. For those who have never had those things, or those who can afford other recreational activities or tutoring services or camps, this may seem like a small thing, but it's not. It's hugely impactful to the many whose lives would shrink with the loss of library services. And in a city in which schools are underperforming and housing costs are rising, the likely reduction in programming, resources, and family-friendly activities that would result from cutting more than a fifth of the library's budget will make our city less likely to attract the very investment it needs to grow and sustain itself. So again, I implore council, as you make decisions on the payroll tax in the near future, to set the tax rate at a level that will maintain current library services. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you hit the microphone until it goes green? Perfect.
Mayor, City Council, good afternoon. My name is Lupe Anguiano and I live here in Springfield. I host La Que Buena 97.7 FM Spanish radio station. My listeners are the essential workers, the parents, and the families who are the backbone of this city. I'm here as a voice for my community facing fear and threat. The recent ICE actions are an assault to our neighbors, to our families, to my community. And not just hearing stories, not just watching it on social media, but I'm hearing the desperation in their voices. The fear that is stopping parents from going to work in peace and keeping children at home. This is a moral crisis that is leaving trauma with our kids in our communities, our youth. And we need a real leadership right now. And with all due respect, many of you have chosen silence, and silence is not leadership. What do we need? More families to be torn apart for something to be done? We are here to say that we are not disposable and we will no longer tolerate this. Springfield must be upheld to its moral commitment to every resident, no matter their status, no matter the color of their skin. And we demand immediate compromising policy shifts, state of emergency, sanctuary resolution, end of surveillance cameras, flock surveillance cameras, and real-time alerts, resources for the communities and families who are being impacted. Mayor and council, your choice is simple. Stand with us, our families of Springfield, or stand with the forces that are tearing them apart. We need your help and support. Protection to be accountable and ensure that no more family members is taken from our city. And we will not stop until our voices are heard, and we will keep coming and ask for support and help. And tonight, when you go to your families and you celebrate Christmas this December, I'm asking you to please look at your kids and your families and put yourself in our shoes. Imagine trying to drive to work, trying to make ends meet for your family, in fear if you're going to be taken away just because of the color of your skin, not knowing if you're going to see your children again, because this is what our families, this is what our communities are living. This is real, and it's having a huge impact on our community. So we're asking for your support, and this is all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two cards I have are Alex Tadeo and Johannes Tadeo.
Good evening, Mayor and Councils. My name is Alex Tadeo. I'm 17 years old. I live 2009 H Street. This is not my first time I've come to speak. When I was around 8 years old, I stood right here during the fight to end the ICE contract. I was just a kid scared that my family and my friends were gonna get taken away. And I was hoping that fear was just gonna leave, hoping that fear would not come back. And now, all of a sudden, I'm scared to even walk outside or realize I'm gonna get a call from my parents, my siblings, and find out that they're getting taken away, getting deported. I'm just scared from just my friends, for my community, because our community is supposed to be somewhere we could feel safe, not where we should be feared. Springfield, I've lived here my whole life, and I always thought this place was a safe place. This is always my go-to spot. It's my safe spot where I can just relax. But all of a sudden, I'm getting so much fear from just being here. It's like, it's not even Springfield anymore. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, councilors. My name is Johannes Tadeo, and I'm here because our community is living in fear and because your silence has made the fear worse. Families in Springfield have been terrorized. ICE has been back in our neighborhoods causing harm. Kids are scared to go to school, as you heard. Parents are afraid to go to work. Neighbors are driving each other's children just to keep families safe. Families have received threatening letters in September saying they're being watched and their children are being watched. And if you care for your child, that you should go back to your country. One letter said, do it or we'll do it for you. You don't belong here. We are seeing you now. This is happening in Springfield. These letters were reported and you know about them because we have contacted you about them. Then on November 5th and November 19th, ICE is back and still. There has been no public statement, no warning, no plan, no words to reassure the families who were targeted. The only response was one Facebook post. No follow up, nor contacting families or community, no in Spanish for community members and that word to see and share. Every single family deserves to feel safe in the city and not be kidnapped or worry about being kidnapped. Families are living in fear not because of what they did, but because the city has not acted in response to these ICE actions. If this happens again and more families are taking, will you communicate directly with the families harmed? Will that be too late? Will you show leadership and stand up against this instead of silence? Tonight, our community needs real action. Like you've heard from other folks, declare a state of emergency, just like other cities have done in the state. Publicly guarantee zero police cooperation with ICE. Pass a Springfield Sanctuary resolution that is stronger. End flock cameras and harmful surveillance. Require ICE agents to identify themselves to Springfield police and provide real-time alerts when ICE is active. Fund the library. Our community needs education, connection, and support right now. Create an emergency family protection fund for legal help for families that have been taken. Springfield deserves leadership, transparency, and protection, and our families deserve to feel safe in the city they all call home. Residents should not feel afraid for being in their skin. Y para mi comunidad, muchas gracias por estar aquí, por la comunidad que llegó aquí para hablar, para compartir su voz, para enseñarles que aquí estamos y vamos a seguir. Aquí no de que nos escuchen a nosotros hablar. Qué triste. 2025. Les pido, ya no tengan miedo o no somos fuertes. Y para estar en comunicación con nosotros necesitamos empezar a hablar con uno a otro, a seguir apoyando a uno a otro. And I ask the city council to please step up. Please hear your residents. Do something. Thank you.
Next two people are Zia Ensign and Michael Williams.
My name is Zia and I am 9 and and I have friends that are brown and I've been scared of losing them. I have friends at school. I have family members too. But the worst of saying is being the oldest of siblings. And I want some of the people that I know that are dark skin is really nice people and I want my siblings to meet it. But they're little. My brother is 3 and my sister is about to be 6 months old. And I want them to grow up and realize that we aren't gonna be afraid in this world and we should not be afraid of this. Doesn't matter how much skin colors, and even if we're not brown, it there's still some things that are terrible and scary because you never know what could happen next because even if you're not that skin color, you can still be like taken away and there's chances that we can be here. And I've seen so many people worrying at my school saying that they don't want to be here. They don't want to go out of their house and just because they're brown and they try to do lots of things to keep them from being attacked and they're scared because anything could happen to their family members while they're at school and that is really hard for me to hear, but I'm still standing strong trying to be a good example for my brother and my sister. My sister can't really see the things that are happening, but I know that eventually when she grows up, there will be a time where she'll she can know, and hopefully by then this will all not be happening. And it's and my brother I can learn too. Thank you.
Thanks, Zia. You did great. If you want to sit by your mom instead of waiting, that would be perfectly fine too, or you can stay up here. Oh, all right. Michael, could you hit the button until it goes green?
There, how's that?
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. My name is Michael Williams, live just east of Kelly Butte. Thank you for the opportunity to talk. In a few days, I'm going to be 80 years old. I never thought I'd be asking my city council to protect us from anonymous masked goons blindfolding and kidnapping people off the streets. I remember seeing news footage of that happening in various foreign dictatorships. Never thought that footage would be made in the United States. My father fought for democracy in World War II. A couple uncles did. I had relatives die for democracy in Korea, Vietnam, Iraq. I do not recall that any relatives died to protect the right to accost people without warrant, detain and expel them without trial, while breaking the windows of their cars. This madness has to stop. Let's start here in Springfield. Declare a state of emergency. Pass a Springfield Sanctuary Resolution. Guarantee zero cooperation with ICE. Create an emergency family protection fund. It may be uncomfortable in these political times to stand up for what we pledged allegiance to over there, but if you stand up, we will stand with you.
Thank you. The next two cards I have are Jocelyn Sanchez and Sarita Leaf.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jocelyn Sanchez, and I am a resident of Eugene in Ward 6. While I may not live in Springfield, I have been an employee for Springfield School District for the past 8 years. I work for the McKinney-Vento program, serving some of our most vulnerable students and families in the city of Springfield. I am not here representing my employer tonight. I am here representing myself. I want to speak to you about my experience on November 19th on our city streets, and I debated long and hard about whether to come forward. But as a community member, a daughter of immigrants, a district employee, a friend, a mother, and a social worker. It is the right thing to do. What happened has stayed with me, and it is something our community needs to hear. During work hours on my way to one of the schools I served, I noticed that I was being followed by an unmarked vehicle with 2 individuals inside, both wearing ski masks and tactical gear. They had no firm license plate. They were tailing me closely and clearly attempting to intimidate me. I had done nothing wrong. I am not someone with a warrant. I am not a threat. Yet I was treated like one. Thankfully, one of my coworkers was waiting outside in the parking lot for me and was a witness to part of this. And if I hadn't pulled into the school parking lot, what would have happened? And let me tell you, this shook me, and I'm still shooken by it. I work with children every single day, and many of the youth I serve, I've already seen a shift in their fear and anxiety. I've seen ICE vehicles roaming near our schools. I hear the worries from students who tell me they feel unsafe walking to and from school, and no child should have to carry that fear. And as adults, we should not have to fear being followed, watched, or intimidated on the streets of our own city. So my questions to you tonight are, what are you going to do to ensure that our streets are safe for all residents and to keep our streets safe from intimidation and targeting? What actions will you take to ensure that ICE cannot terrorize our families, our workers, and our children without accountability? Because these are our neighbors, these are our families. These are the students who sit in the classrooms every day trying to learn through fear that no child should have to carry. And it doesn't sit well with me, and it shouldn't sit well with any of us or with you. Our community deserves transparency, accountability, and protection. What happened to me isn't something that I can just forget, and it is not something that this city and Lane County should accept as normal. We need ICE off our streets and flock cameras. Thank you for listening, and I hope that you will act.
Good evening. I'm Sarita Leaf. I live on West K Street in Springfield. Everything that people have been saying echoes my feelings. City Council people, we need you. We need you right now to stand against this invasion by ICE in Springfield, right here in Springfield. We need you to follow the lead of the city of Newport. What was it, 2 weeks ago? Which is fighting against the building of a detention center in Oregon. Oregon right now has no detention centers, and we really should keep it that way. My family escaped the Nazi scourge in Europe. My uncles fought in World War II to make sure it didn't come to our shores. But look what's happening here and now. We need you to do what, in your role of city council, you can do. I also would like to see you declare a state of emergency, because it is a state of emergency. Pass a Springfield Sanctuary resolution. Yes, we've had one in the past. We need every municipality in this country to hear it again, to hear that we are continuing to stand up. Guarantees zero cooperation with ICE, and as other people have mentioned, resist any of the establishment of flock cameras. And create an emergency family protection fund, because that's what we all want and need for our friends and neighbors and family. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got Alejandro A. and Kimberly Sanchez. I've got 2 minutes left to 40 minutes, so I'm going to just check to see and tell you how many we've got. Just come on up. Okay, we have 2, 3, 6. Hey, just give me 1 second here. Do we have hands up online?
Currently have 5 hands waiting.
Okay, so right now I've got 5 more cards, plus 5 hands waiting. So we're just about to 40 minutes. And we got 10 more cards to go. So we're probably on pace to hit another 30 minutes. And this was our check-in point. I'm just double checking before we keep. All right. Thank you for letting us pause. Go ahead.
Me? My name is Kimberly Sanchez. I go to Centennial School. I go to Centennial School. I'm 10 years old. My biological dad, he left me with my siblings and my mom. But thankfully, I have a new stepdad that he is brown skin. He really brings joy to my whole family. And I'm scared of losing him. I'm scared that when he leaves to work, that he's not gonna come back. And then my 12-year-old brother, he kind of looks like Mexican brown skin, and I'm kind of scared that he's not gonna come back from Hamlin Middle School one day. And I've known my brother for all my life, and I'm scared of losing him. I mean, we do fight, but he's my brother. I love him. And at school, my friend, she has told me that she has been scared of losing her mom too. And I just feel really bad for her. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor and Councilors. My name is Alejandro Aguilar. In 2018, I stood here fighting against the removal of the ICE contracts at the Springfield jail. 7 years later, I am back here again, fighting against ICE presence here in our community. And as I said it before, I'll say it again, silence is violence. Over the past few weeks, we've seen ICE terrorists come into our communities and separate families. Over the past few weeks, I am reminded by my parents that before I leave my home, to make sure I have this, my American passport. Because no matter if you are documented or not, when you look like me, a person of color and accent, you are a target. Despite that, I still acknowledge my privilege and I use it to help others. I'm not asking you to be in the front lines of our struggle. I'm asking you to acknowledge and put to use your privilege as well. To reassure the people, to reassure the children, to protect the people, to make an official statement and stand by it. We are more than just being put on an agenda. We are people and we deserve to be heard, to be seen, to be supported. It's the bare fucking minimum. Fuck ICE and fuck the flock cameras. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next 2 cards I have are June Fothergill and Kai Fireside.
June Fothergill, from Ward 4. Y'all know me, so. I wasn't going to say anything, and I don't have anything extra to say. You've heard it already. But when my friend told me about how much fear there is in our community, I do implore you to act. You are our representatives, and we need you to stand with the people who are suffering and are fearful and who are experiencing this harassment. So you've been given lots of different possibilities of things to do, and you know you can. So I just encourage you to do that. Stand up, be heard, and reassure your community that you are there for them. And also part of that to me also would be to keep the library fully funded. So it's the one place in this community where everyone is welcomed, and including our Hispanic community in wonderful ways. You must keep that library fully functioning. It's very important. So thank you for standing up for our community.
Thank you.
Kai Fireside. I live inside Ward 1, but not in Ward 1. We're at an historic place here. We have so many issues that we're facing. We're trying to deal with them as a community, but there is only so much that we can do. I know that you are all unpaid volunteers, but you have a level of power that we do not. I go to the federal building on Tuesdays. That doesn't feel like doing much. I've been fighting flock and other surveillance, and that's been successful to a point. I am a loyal library patron. I paid $100 for my library card because I live outside the urban growth boundary. But all these things feel minor compared to what you can do. ICE activity is an emergency here that requires your immediate attention. The library is already underfunded. Get that money somewhere else. There were other options that the task force mentioned. Raise the payroll tax, cut overtime. Don't touch the library. And every single day we have more news about surveillance being used by ICE. We have more news about how slimy a company Flock is. The last thing we need at this time is to spend a single penny on more surveillance. Surveilling the community that is looking to you, the only people with the power to solve these problems. Some people in this room are running for higher political offices. You might want to do something to keep these constituents from getting kidnapped off the streets, lest the only people left to vote are those of us that are acutely aware of our white privilege and yours.
Bob Sheldon, and I cannot make out the last name, but the first name's Pablo.
Okay, my name is Pablo de Dios. I live in here for 25 or 30 years in this state. I love Oregon. It's really, really sad when we hear this situation we have for immigration. I work in all over Oregon. I do construction job. I do the 88 ramp. We have a really, really bad story. The concern is I'm here because I want to try support the Latino community. I think, in my opinion, is we can make a difference in America. I'm here I pay my taxes. I think so. All Latinos, okay, we feel really, really bad in this time. We not feel safe. A lot of family, like last week, we try to celebrate the Thanksgiving, We say thank you for everything. But last week, a lot of family not have food in the tables. A lot of kids scared. We had to put a lot of cameras or lock the door because we never know what happened. Okay? And I think we're not criminals. We come in here for work. We do the same, like you guys pay your taxes, buy your gas, driving all around. Like right now, tomorrow I had to wake up 2 in the morning. I had to drive to Portland work. Every day, we're scared. And we concern this. If you have something resolution you have, we appreciate your help. You guys have the power. And remember, no matter what, what color, what race, we can make a difference. We can make America great again. But something, we need your support. Please, please. All Latinos family right now, we feel really bad. Okay? Sometimes we see the car police, every family think, oh, that's immigration over there. That situation we have here is really bad. Families scared, kids scared. And please, please, we need your help. We make a solution and we need better future with my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Rob.
Good evening, Rob Sheldon. I live on Hayden Bridgeway. I came here tonight to talk about Flock yet again, and I'll get to that in a moment. But listening to all of these people here, it's clear that these people are victims of terrorism. You have right now roving thugs in your city, and they are causing a great deal of damage. The surveillance systems are an integral part of their capabilities. There are, at minimum, a couple of things that you could do right now. Flock has been my part-time job now for the last several months. It's really kind of taken over my life. I have found that most recently I've been trying to reassure people that there is a political process underway to try to bring this to some kind of conclusion, but we're not seeing a lot of movement yet. I believe that we can get there, but it would be nice to have some kind of statement from the city on exactly what that process is going to look like and how long it's going to take and what needs to happen. As yet, that's all entirely unclear. In addition, we've attempted to get a copy of the contract through which the city has Flock services currently, and it seems that that's not available. What we've received is signed paperwork from Insight Public Sector, but the specific terms under which the city has conducted operations with Flock are not available. It seems that the city is itself unsure of what kind of agreement it has with Flock and what those terms are, and that's not a great look. So we've got a public records request that has been as yet unfulfilled now for several months. It would be nice to get that sorted out. But most of all, the voices here tonight are even more important. Flock is a part of that, but it took a great deal of courage for the people here to speak. I guarantee that in all of their minds, they were worried about repercussions and consequences. Can you be any less courageous from where you sit? Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any more cards. Neil, could you call the first person online?
Yes, the first speaker is Cameron Stringfield, followed by Jetty, Eddie, and Cameron. You should be able to unmute your microphone.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, my name is Cameron Stringfield. I live in Eugene but work in Springfield, and I'm a member of the PSL and the Lane County Immigrant Defense Network. In the last month, we've been seeing dozens upon dozens of kidnappings from Lane County, including in Springfield. ICE is dragging people out of cars, masked and guns drawn. ICE is showing up at schools to find people to kidnap. ICE has raided a Guatemalan community in Cottage Grove. And for months, ICE has been unconstitutionally kidnapping our immigrant neighbors attending their regular check-ins at the ICE field office in Eugene, and assaulting and brutalizing peaceful community members who protest ICE atrocities there, document their activity, and support the people being affected. I've been a firsthand witness to this. We've been struggling against this all year. To tell you the truth, the ICE crisis is what led me to be so involved in activism against Flock cameras. It is a crisis. It is an emergency. and it is affecting your city and your constituents, and you need to decide whether you want to be complicit or fight back against Trump's racist deportation machine. This is a critical moment in history for you as leaders of Springfield, and it requires action. Here's some actions you can take immediately to protect your community members from ICE. As other speakers have said, declare a state of emergency. Make a public declaration that you will not cooperate with ICE. Draft and pass a strengthened Springfield sanctuary resolution. End the usage of flock cameras here and pass local ordinances banning surveillance systems like Flock. Flock is a company that has shown again and again that they'll assist ICE in their violent actions. We cannot trust a company like that in our city, and the only way to prevent it is to stop it entirely. There are no real safeguards. Require identification of all ICE agents, meaning no masks, show badges, and identify when asked. Stop allowing ICE to be above the law. Require Springfield police to enforce all criminal or traffic laws for ICE agents and prosecute law-breaking agents. End the usage of unmarked and uncovered vehicles by the Eugene Police Department due to the similarity with ICE vehicles to avoid fear, confusion, and unnecessary incidents with local police. Post real-time public alerts when ICE is active. Fund local immigrant support and defense organizations. Create an emergency family protection fund for the families who have been impacted by ICE's atrocious actions, and come to the federal building in Eugene on any Tuesday, though the last of the month is always the biggest day there, and talk to the local organizations supporting our neighbors that are being kidnapped at the ICE facility, and stand with your community members as public officials. No one should have to live in fear, but the administration and their psychotic fascist ambitions is waging a war on our immigrant neighbors. What are local leaders going to do to fight back?
Thank you. Next person, please. Next speaker is Jetty Eddie, followed by Hazel Berry. And Jetty, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Okay, can you hear me?
We can.
Perfect. My name is Jetty. I live in Ward 4, and I'm here to be clear and I'm here to be direct. We demand action. Our community deserves safety, dignity, and investments that actually help people and not more surveillance. We are calling on you to declare a state of an emergency, guarantee zero ICE cooperation, pass a Springfield sanctuary resolution, end flock cameras and surveillance systems, require ICE to identify themselves, provide real-time public alerts when ICE is active, fund community support organizations, create an emergency family protection fund. And lastly, fund the flock, or fund the library and not the flock cameras. These are straightforward necessities that we expect you to take action on. And to the people in the audience, please familiarize yourself with the PIRC and report ICE to them. Their phone number is 1-888-622-1510. Please look up the whistle alert system and know your community is not alone. We're with you, even if our city and our government is not. We have your back. We see you. We love you. We care. Fuck ICE.
The next speaker is Hazel Berry, followed by Bryce Mayhall. Hazel, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hi there. Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Hazel. I live in a rural area just out of town, but I drive through Springfield regularly and I do a lot of my shopping and in-town activities in Springfield. So I'm here to push Springfield City Council to do more to protect our Latino and non-white neighbors from ICE. ICE routinely violates the constitutional rights of the people they detain and deport, and anyone who gets in their way, really, by entering people's homes without a judicial warrant, as is required, detaining people based solely on racial profiling, violently assaulting their intended targets and some of the activists who help monitor, protest, and respond to ICE raids, detaining people when they are attending court-ordered immigration proceedings, thereby interrupting their rights to due process, detaining some individuals for very long periods without bond hearings so they can't contest their detention, as is their right, impeding or refusing detainees' rights to access a lawyer, even at their own expense, obscuring detainees' locations and sending them out of state to hide them from their support systems, who would otherwise be able to get them legal help, and sending detainees to detention centers with inhumane conditions, without proper medical attention, or even to countries far away from their home countries of origin, where they do not know the language and cannot navigate the legal system. ICE may be a law enforcement agency, but it's acting in flagrant violation of the law. People are getting abducted and beaten on the street by masked agents with no identification in unmarked cars, often without probable cause, based only on the color of their skin. They ignore court orders that order them to cease these illegal activities, assuming the federal government will just have their back. ICE is a criminal organization, and we can't stand by while they ignore our basic constitutional protections. If the federal government is just going to let this happen, we have to take it into our own hands. And we have to take meaningful action that actually targets these power dynamics and not just signal our virtues. So for that reason, and in light of this, I ask Springfield City Council to declare a state of emergency because this is an emergency. Day after day, people are getting snatched off the street just for being brown. End flock cameras and surveillance systems, and defund the flock camera program for good, because it's already being used as a tool for ICE enforcement. Please use that money to fund the library instead. Require ICE to identify themselves to local police and pursue ICE agents who break the law. Actively help protect the community by reissuing public alerts when ICE is active, support community organizations, and create an emergency family protection fund. Thank you for listening and for your service to our community.
Our next speaker is Bryce Mayhall, followed by Latif Amando. Bryce, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me okay?
We can, Bryce.
Okay. My name is Bryce Mayall, and I am here as a resident of Springfield. I am here to speak against Flock. My issue is not with such technology itself, but with the storage and use of data. It is not stored only locally, subject to strict, well-thought-out policies concerning duration of storage, custody of data, cybersecurity, and access. Flock data is stored elsewhere, subject to use by federal agencies. As we are seeing, such agencies, ICE in particular, are using these data to target people on a questionable legal basis. We must ensure the safety of our vulnerable communities in every way we can, and restricting access to our citizens' location data is an extremely important part of that. I urge Council to end all contact, contracts, and uses of Flock permanently. We don't need them. We need real safety, the kind that comes from knowing that ICE isn't watching our movements. Good people, people who care about their community, do not provide an authoritarian government with more tools to do harm. I believe that you, our elected representatives, understand that you are here to represent the good in all of us and to minimize harm done to all of us, but especially our minorities, our most vulnerable, our neighbors. I recently learned that the full Nazi takeover happened far faster than I realized. America is not following that timeline, thankfully, but in large part because there is such widespread opposition to what is happening. We must be a notable part of that opposition, even in Springfield here, in every way we are able. Ending Flock's presence in our community is one such way. Please do the right thing. Also, please fund the library. Thank you.
The next speaker is Latif Amando, followed by the last hand that we have up, which is Jeffrey Gordon. And Latif, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Latife Amado. I am a resident of Eugene, but I am actively responding to incidents of ICE in Springfield. I'm here tonight to demand action in response to what can only be described as criminal targeting of immigrant residents by ICE in our community. People are being snatched from outside their homes, their workplaces, and during routine check-ins without lawful justification, without due process. Violations are documented every single day locally. These are racialized enforcement practices designed to intimidate and destabilize Black, Brown, and immigrant families. As someone who responds directly to these incidents, I see the fallout every single day. Parents are terrified to leave their homes. Children are living with trauma and missing school. Workers are losing wages. Families become unhoused after a single detention. This is a public safety crisis created by government agencies, and Springfield must decide whether it will reduce harm or enable it. Tonight, I'm calling on the city to stop contributing to systems that further criminalize and endanger our neighbors. Publicly condemn ICE criminal and predatory actions. Refusing to speak up is complicity. Reject the expansion or use of surveillance technologies, including automated license plate readers and flock cameras. These are known to facilitate racial profiling, data sharing with immigration enforcement, and wrongful detentions. These systems do not make our community safer. They make specific people easier to target based on race. Implement protective policies and allocate emergency supports for those directly impacted, including access to legal defense, emergency housing funds, and partnerships with community-based responders. This is not unprecedented. Cities and counties across Oregon have already taken action in response to these harms. Washington County, Forest Grove, Hillsborough, Lane County, and Woodburn have all declared local states of emergency and allocated emergency funds to support immigrant residents and mitigate humanitarian impacts. ICE may operate with federal authority, but this council chooses whether local systems help them target our community. We know who is harmed by these practices. We know what causes the harm, and now you know what you can do to stop it. And also, chinga la pinche migra.
The final speaker is Jeffrey Gordon, and Jeffrey, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, I'm Dr. Jeffrey Gordon. I live and work as a clinical psychologist in Ward 7 of Eugene. I'm a member of the PSL and Immigrant Defense Network. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. Just know that everything I say to you is the same as what I would say to my city council. Well, I agree with everything that pretty much everyone has said before me tonight. So still bear with me and I'll say my piece. Look, not only are ICE, CBP, and other DHS agencies enacting a racist terror campaign, they're specifically targeting working class immigrants and social justice activists. Though notably, they have attacked city officials and police officers on occasion. But, you know, I don't see ICE trying to deport Elon Musk back to South Africa, even though he's a well-known drug abuser, sexual harasser, war profiteer, and someone who may not have immigrated legally. He's going to be fine because he is rich and white. Kidnapping immigrants has nothing to do with stopping crime and everything to do with racism. ICE operates in open defiance of the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the established rule of law. The only logic behind their actions is bigotry, ethnic cleansing. My Jewish grandfather served in the army from 1941 to 45 in North Africa and Europe. He didn't serve just so that the Gestapo could be reborn in my lifetime. May the sacrifices of every generation of American veterans weigh on your conscience. So, follow the lead of several other cities and my Eugene City Councilor, Lindsay Leach, and look into declaring a state of emergency as soon as possible. Furthermore, I demand your public guarantee of zero ICE cooperation. Pass a Springfield Sanctuary resolution. Require ICE to identify themselves to local police. Issue real-time public alerts when ICE is active. Fund local community support organizations. Create an emergency family protection fund for families that have been taken. And of course, end the agreement with Flock Safety Incorporated. Turn off the cameras, cover them, take them down. And the same goes for any automated surveillance systems that you may have or be looking into. And fund your library. This is what I demand of my own city and yours. Thank you very much for your time. And also, I endorse Kai Firestone for the representative position. Thank you.
No other speakers.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for a lot of the courage that it took to go through both what your experiences are and what your community members have. I know that everybody in this room's been through a lot. I've got a couple comments that I want to make. Then I'm going to open it up to the rest of the council to jump in, and then I'll come back if we've got additional time. The one thing that really jumped out to me was just the amount of courage that folks are showing right now. Like, it takes a lot to come and talk to us about what your experiences are. It takes a lot to share what your neighbors go through, and the reality is that we're listening. This is a complicated and nuanced conversation, and part of it is because of how federal law works. But what I want to tell you is that at its core, what I'm concerned about is people's constitutional rights. Now, we're going to get through a couple of, questions about, some of the suggestions, but people have the right to due process. They have the right to their constitutional rights. I think the thing that I just wanted to chat a little bit more about is, like, Oregon works under a sanctuary state law called the Oregon Promise Act. RPD does not cooperate with ICE. They don't. City employees don't cooperate with ICE. That is governed under a state law. If you have interest and experience and willingness to research it, you can go online and you can read the immigration section of the PD's standard operating procedures, and it outlines exactly what they do and the instructions to their officers. And I also think it's important in these moments, when people have got so much fear, is that, especially when it comes to emergency response in public safety, is know that, like, if you've witnessed a crime, if you're a victim of a crime, you can come forward to Springfield PD. They do not cooperate with immigration. And that the same goes for the fire department and emergency services as well. With that, I think the one suggestion I do have, and maybe I'm looking at the city manager, and then I'll turn it over to everybody else, is really maybe we can just outline where some of these governing documents come from, and have and give people an opportunity just to give a link to go and read where the state law sits, and where our standard operating procedures sit, so that they can see that Oregon's got one of the toughest sanctuary state laws in the country, and that's really governing everything you see across the state of Oregon. With that, I've got about 15 more points, but I'm going to take a second and turn it over to council and see if people want to weigh in. Go ahead, Councilor Blackwell.
I just want to say thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for sharing. And nobody that lives in Springfield or in the United States, for that matter, should fear a loved one not coming home at night. So thank you.
Councilor Mo.
I'm sorry to say here tonight, I learned I'm a member of the privileged white. I'm embarrassed to hear that. I don't feel that way. I empathize with everybody in this room, and I feel the same way you do. And if my white privilege gives me a little bit of power, I will use it to help support you.
Councilor Rodley.
Thank you. I'm going to take up a little bit more time and probably be a little bit messier. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and sharing your experiences and sharing your fear. And one of the things that many of you said was, you said, we're looking to you upon here on this dais because you have the power. You all are the ones who have the power. I have a 9-year-old grandson who is Latino, so same age as Zia, I think, and who was born in 2016. And his birth coincided with the election in 2016 and was one of the primary motivators for my running for public office and wanting to get on this side, because I was always on that side. I also want to acknowledge that I am one voice And being on a council means that we have to move this entire council when we get to decisions, we get to declarations, we get to proclamations. Your being here tonight does more than 5 years of me being on city council, trying to have these conversations and bring, I can share what I know. I can share my experiences with my family and the people in my neighborhood, but it means so much more when you all come forward and share. And I also want to acknowledge that it's far riskier when you all come forward and share. I want to agree with Councilor Blackwell, and I don't even feel like I need to say it. Everyone who lives in Springfield deserves to feel safe and deserves to feel protected. And I'm hearing that over and over again. And the painful piece of this is that I personally cannot promise that I can keep every one of you safe or protect everyone from what is happening from federal overreach and the repercussions of a federal election. Elections have consequences, and while we are here to tackle them in every possible way with what we can do at the city level, there are going to be things that we are going to disappoint you on because we are not going to have as much pull and say at this moment as we would like to. And I want to acknowledge that a couple of you said it. This current environment has definitely emboldened the racism and the bigotry and the fear and the constant discomfort and fear that folks are experiencing. I can't say fear enough because I'm feeling the fear that you all have shared with us tonight, and I face it all day in my day job and in my neighborhood and in my family. So I just want you to know how much I appreciate it, how I know how difficult it is, how risky it is, how some of you will probably be heading home saying, I don't even know if they heard me. I don't know what the point of this is. But Springfield is your city too. And I'm hoping that everyone leaves here saying, this is our city. These are our neighbors. These are the people that we care about. These are the people who the children in our schools. Everybody up here knows I'm incredibly proud of. I have a daughter who teaches at Springfield High School and teaches new arrivals in math. And so I feel like we are so embedded in this problem, and yet I can't speak for my colleagues, but we also feel very helpful. I can sign on to a letter, which I did. I can be a voice against the flock cameras, which I have been. I can continue to carry your wishes and your voices into these decision-making conversations. And I cannot promise you that we're going to get it right, or I'm going to be able to keep you safe. And I'm going to be the one getting those phone calls on November 19th at 7 a.m. letting me know what's going on in the city. I'm immediately on the phone to the mayor and to the reaching out to the city to say, what are we doing? Where are we standing? Does anybody know what's going on? That's what I want to say, is that it isn't that everybody up here is not paying attention or that everybody is silent. It means that we have to pull together as a community and figure out how we're going to stand up, what we're going to do, what we can do, and what is going to be the most meaningful. If it's a proclamation, I used to be over there. I get a little bit crabby about proclamations because I'm like, we can make a proclamation, and I don't know if it's going to move the dial unless we have some meat to back that up. But I'm going to keep fighting to do everything that we possibly can. So this was I promised you it was going to be long and it was going to be messy. I want you to know that there is at least, and I think there is more than one, a voice on this council that is not only aware, but is striving and trying to make sure that we do whatever we can to push back against anything that is inhibiting the safety and the well-being and the happiness of my neighbors and the residents of Springfield. It doesn't feel great. It feels really crappy and it feels super unsafe. And I just want you to know that I can't give you a good answer, and yet I'm going to keep working on it. And I'm going to keep being that voice for that. And a voice isn't always going to move the it's not always going to move it, but keep telling us what you need us to do so that we can try to figure out what are the pieces that we can do and what's going to make the biggest difference in this really scary, horrible time. Thank you.
Councilor Weber.
Thank you all for coming and sharing your fears and your wishes. And some of what you're asking for is maybe something that we can do. Some of it I feel kind of powerless to actually say that I can make that happen. Corey said it really, really well. And I feel horrible. I don't like the position that any of us are in, and I don't know how to help, but you've all given us a lot to think about and some options that I'm really gonna give some hard, serious thought to. And again, I know how hard it was for all of you to come here tonight, and your courage is just, it warms my heart. So thank you for sharing.
Councilor Stone.
Gracias a todos ustedes por venir. Me alegro mucho venir y que vengan y veros. Quiero que ustedes entiendan que tenemos una gerente de la ciudad que todavía ya ha estado trabajando para apoyar a ustedes. Yo voy a la iglesia de Santa Alicia y nuestra iglesia es un lugar santo. La mayoría de mis compañeros son latinos. Y quiero mucho que todos estén seguros, sanos, sentir cuidados. Pero por favor que saben que el sentimiento de este concilio es que sí, queremos apoyar y cuidar nuestros vecinos. Todos en este aula son vecinos. Y tenemos, sí, un gerente de la ciudad, un chief de police o jefe de police, que son muy buenas personas que quieren mucho a nuestra comunidad y quieren proteger todo el mundo. Gracias.
Councilor Buck.
Thank you. I just really appreciate all the testimony and coming forward on a lot of different levels. You know, I have 2 children that are in our public schools, and they're impacted by this in different ways. Their friends, their teachers, people they know. It's a very different time than I've ever known, and any of us have ever known. I also want to say that I really appreciate the clear communication. You guys asked us some direct questions. You guys outlined some very direct things and said, hey, these are the things that we want. I think at the very least, we can respond to those. We may not be able to respond to those tonight, but I think that acknowledging that you've asked for certain things, and we can look into those and we can see what can be done and we can respond to that, I think is reasonable. And that's something that I can commit to at least continuing to pursue with the questions within the council. And then also just know that fear is just unacceptable in our communities. We can't accept this, whether it affects one or whether it affects all of us. We can't accept this. We need communities that are safe. We need communities that work together, that can live together, and that can play together. That's who we are in Springfield. And when that's threatened, we all need to respond to that. And you guys have made a huge step in coming out here and continuing to come out here. I'm very new to this council, and I've seen you guys show up multiple times. And I'm so happy every time you guys do, because we are one community. And continue to talk to us, because we need your support as well. We need to hear what your experience is, what you want, what you need, and what you see, because when we're all working together, we can get a lot done. And as Councilor Radley said, you guys have a lot of power. You guys tell us how Springfield really is, not the way we want it to be, but the way it is. We all have our own perspectives, and thank you for sharing yours. We'll continue to do what we can to support you, continue to do what you can to give us the feedback and let us hear those voices.
All right, thank you, everybody. I had a couple more specific comments. One of the things I'm just sort of thinking about is all the asks that are in this that we heard tonight. One of the challenges that, and I think Councilor Rodley mentioned it, is right, like really at the core of this, everybody wants to know that they get to go home safely tonight, and it is a challenge. This is a challenging situation that we can't necessarily guarantee. Some of the asks are are maybe in the realm of doable. Some of these asks may not be legal under under federal law. Some of them, I think the right step here is maybe give us a chance to go back, and get some more thought out responses to them. Um, I want to at least prepare people for the fact that some of the things you ask for, while they feel like they're going to move you towards in us as a community where they need to go, may not be something within our power to grant. Especially restrictions on how ICE operates, how ICE is in the community. Some of that is governed under federal law enforcement. But I think when I really listen to the amount of testimony that we've heard, I really think probably giving us a longer, sharing with people a longer, more thought out answer is going to be helpful. A couple things I do want to point out. Somebody brought up an American passport that they carried with them. It spoke to me. Like, I don't know what else I could tell you. Yeah, I know. The other piece, I think, Johannes, you brought up the threatening letters that did occur. One thing that we can walk away tonight and say, like, if you get threatening letters, if you see hate speech, right, like you should report it. We track those items, we follow up on those items. PD is deeply concerned about them. At a minimum, they track them to look for patterns. So even if you're seeing material that doesn't feel significant, you taking the time to report it helps PD and more broadly thinking about the community. I have two asks specific around the library funding. There's a lot of stuff in tonight. The library funding really is a question that is going to get handled in the budget in the spring. So when we talk about sharing information, there's a whole public process that we're developing the budget for next year. That conversation is not going to happen until 2026. The flock cameras, and I saw some members of the community group in here. We're like our PD, our police department. Some of the people up on the dais are meeting with that group on 12/9 to talk about what the path forward might look like. We're not going to have an answer, for the next couple of weeks, but we are committed to finding whatever the path is around there and getting very clear with the community about what's going to happen. What I can tell you is it's going to take a little bit of time. It is what public process looks like. Our police department's committed to that conversation. Elected officials up here are committed to that conversation. But like, if for some reason the recommendation is to turn them on, we will notify and tell the community up front. I don't know that that's what's going to happen, but I want to at least alleviate the fear that saying like tomorrow that something is going to happen with those cameras. Our commitment is to have a conversation and then come back to this body and talk about it. Rob, the contract, can somebody help with the contract?
Yeah, I made a note of that. We can follow up.
All right, perfect. Thank you. A couple other miscellaneous things. The library survey. I don't know that I see Callie again. I would just point, I think there's commentary about some of the statistics around that survey and some of the control documentation around it. You might take a look at it, because I think it was effectively an open survey. But I think if we haven't got those to you, we will get them to you. I think that was all I had. Did anybody have other comments? Go ahead.
I made a note and I forgot to add it. For anybody who might be watching or listening, I appreciated the call for an emergency fund for families. I don't know if we're going to get there, but I'm encouraging anybody who's interested in getting resources, and this, I'm going to make a plug, to families who are being affected to join me. I donate to Plaza de Nuestra Comunidad, and they do fantastic work. And I was really excited to do whatever I could to help them be able to bring some of those services here into Springfield. So if you are someone who wants to use that privilege and wants to use your resources, they are frontline doing this work, supporting people. So it's something you can do in the short term. Thank you.
All right. I think that is all the council response we had. We've got a couple more items tonight that we're going to try to squeeze in. I know folks have been here for a long time. You are more than welcome to stay, but it is not going to break our hearts if you decide you want to go home. Thanks for coming this evening. Okay, could we get the next item, please?
Yes, any business from the city council?
I think we are good.
Okay. We have items under business from the city manager. Item number 1 is the city street annexation ordinances, the Scribner error amendments. Mark Rust is here for this item. This is a first reading and no action is required.
I can keep this really brief, and there is a Scrivener's error in the title for this item of a Scrivener's error, so I apologize for that. But this is to correct the city street annexations contained an incorrect special districts reference relating to the Glenwood Water District and Willa-Kinsey Rural Fire Protection District. Those were remnants of a previous ordinance. So we have struck those, and this again is just a first reading tonight. We'll be back with a second reading on the consent calendar to correct those incorrect references.
Any questions? All right, first reading, no action. Next item, please.
Next item is council action on city manager compensation adjustment. Chaim Hertz is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Likewise, I will try to be as brief as possible too. So Chaim Hertz, Director of Human Resources. I am here seeking a motion from City Council regarding the city manager's compensation for fiscal year 26. Last year, the city manager declined a wage increase, and Council recently provided guidance for a one-time deposit of 80 hours of PTO in lieu of an FY25 adjustment. This year's market review shows that the Springfield city manager salary is sitting at 10.5% below median of comparable Oregon jurisdictions, with expected upward movement in Tigard and Medford once their vacancies are filled. After reviewing the indices and the market data, Council previously directed HR to bring forward a 5% increase to the city manager's base wage, retroactive to July 1 of 25, and the fiscal impact for that is $12,000. Ongoing costs as well as ongoing costs in the future. Tonight's motion, if approved, would formalize the 5% wage adjustment and authorize HR to add 80 hours of PTO to the city manager's leave bank. I'll pause for any questions.
I had one question. Is that motion enough to do the PTO portion?
Yeah, the motion would be for both the 5% and the lump sum payment, or the lump sum of 80 hours of PTO to put into the bank for the city manager.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Hold the motion as it is. I move to adjust the city manager's salary in alignment with current market comparators and the established salary index benchmarks.
I will second that.
Could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Councilor Weber.
Yes.
Councilor Moe.
Yes.
Councilor Rodley.
Yes.
Councilor Blackwell.
Yes.
Councilor Buck.
Absolutely.
And Councilor Stout.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 6 yeses, 0 nos. And I just want to say, Nancy, we're glad you're our city manager and we appreciate all the work. Next item, please.
Any other business from the city manager?
No further business, thank you.
Any business from the city attorney?
Just two quick things. I heard from the testimony of those communities of Woodburn and Hillsborough, so we'll start pulling together that information. They did some of the things that folks were asking for tonight, and we'll send that out to the council so you can get an idea what those look like. And you do have an executive session after this. It will be very quick if you still want to have it, but it's regarding some pending litigation.
Is it pressing that it's got to get done tonight, or can we do it next week?
Christina's handling it. She can come on up and let you know.
Because I have a sense that people are going to turn into pumpkins here.
I can make it very quick tonight if you want to stay for tonight. Otherwise, we could do it next week. I really would need it to be done before you go on break for the holiday, though.
Oh, did you do it? Okay. All right. They found their second wind. Okay. I'm going to adjourn the regular session and politely wait for everybody to leave for the executive session, except for the press. They can stay.